Your heart stops in the silence before the strike. A deep and ancient fury is waking inside the sword. Now the world tears open. Die! The whites of Fen Juechen's eyes disappeared completely as they became pitch black. The black sword in his hand was thrust out in midair, and as it descended, countless pillars of pitch black water shot up from below. The dark whirlpool of energy behind him produced a tearing noise that sounded like the cry of 1,000 birds as it hurtled towards Xianxia like an enormous sky-devouring devil, as if it wanted to swallow him up in deep and boundless darkness. Star God's broken shadow. The pitch-black sword beams that tore open space itself, and the shroud of darkness descending from above, were filled with an extremely grim aura of danger. Xianxia's body blurred, and 5 afterimages shot out in 5 different directions as he instantly avoided Fen Juechen's jet-black sword beams. After that, his body ignited with phoenix flames as he soared into the sky, unleashing the Empyrean dance of the phoenix wing. The burning phoenix flames were especially luminous and harsh in the midst of the darkened world. Phoenix flames rushed outwards as it forcibly tore a scarlet trench through the enormous dark domain. By the time Xianxia's body had come to a stop, he was already 1 kilometer away from his original location. He extended an arm, and to his astonishment, he saw that his clothes had become riddled with holes. Not only did the darkness that had engulfed the entire space have the ability to swallow light, it would also consume his flesh every second he spent beneath it. Even more frightening was that it also had the effect of heavily suppressing one's soul. Xianxia possessed the dragon god's soul, so this kind of pressure did little to affect him. However, if another person were facing Fen Juechen, even if they had the same level of profound strength as him, that person would feel ill at ease in this shroud of darkness. Their chest would feel constricted and painful, and if they spent enough time in this darkness, their mind might actually collapse under the strain. The phoenix flames surrounding Xianxia's body flared up. The boiling flames surrounded his entire body, blocked the corrosive effect of the dark, profound energy. His arms casually crossed over his chest, and he did not even spare Fen Juechen a single look as he spoke calmly. Tusk, tusk. It was such a grand display of might that I expected an attack capable of shaking both the heavens and the earth. But to think that it couldn't even harm a single hair on my head, trash. Ooh-ah. The pitch-black whirlpool behind Fen Juechen suddenly exploded. Dark and sinister, profound energy surged forth like a tidal wave, as it raised an enormous wave of water more than 3 kilometers high. At the same instant, a furious roar that seemed to have come from the very depths of hell rang out among surging waves that were rushing into the sky. Night Devil Heaven Burial. Darkness broke through the heavens, and for a moment, Xianxia's entire field of vision was engulfed in darkness. It was as if the entire sky had been completely and utterly buried by the darkness. It was truly a power that could bury the heavens. Xianxia's pupils contracted slightly, but his expression remained calm and unperturbed. He did not dare to relax for even an instant as the darkness in front of him threatened to overthrow the heavens. Space began to distort severely under the erosion of the darkness. Both of his eyes widened as he stared at the approaching darkness. He immediately used extreme mirage lightning to retreat backwards swiftly, yet he still could not escape the world of darkness that was vast enough to bury the heavens. The moment the darkness engulfed Xianxia's body, his eyes flashed as the evil god barrier instantly opened. Sealing cloud-locking sun, the space around them tore as easily as drenched paper. In an instant, more than 10 small islands were obliterated. The surface of the darkened ocean fell by nearly 3 kilometers, and countless marine animals were exterminated the moment they came into contact with that aura of death. Under the effects of sealing cloud-locking sun, even the darkness that had the power to bury the heavens was unable to actually bury Xianxia. The evil god barrier twisted and distorted, but in the end, it did not collapse. Xianxia poured all of his energy into supporting sealing cloud-locking sun, as all the phoenix flames around his body flared up to their greatest magnitude. It was as if his entire body had sunk into a swampy darkness, but he was still moving at an extremely fierce and peerless speed. Bang! Following a clear, resonating phoenix cry, the world of darkness was violently split apart by a beam of flame. The moment Xianxia escaped the enshrouding darkness, the evil god barrier completely collapsed, but there was not even a single scratch on his body. He fled far away before letting out a wild and reckless laugh. Ha 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 ha! Fen Juechen, don't tell me that this is all you've got. You're so weak that it's simply hilarious. Ha 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 ha! Xianxia might have been laughing outwardly, but he was actually astonished and alarmed inside. The profound energy Fen Juechen used was extremely unique, and he had never come into contact with it in either of his two lives. When he was swallowed by that darkness that could blot out the sky and cover the earth, he was sure that if he had failed to use sealing cloud-locking sun in time, he would have definitely received serious injuries all over his body within a matter of seconds. Even his soul might have been harmed. Right now, Xianxia was confident that he could forcibly endure the phoenix flames of Feng Tianwei, who was also at the 6th level of the sovereign profound realm. Yet Fen Juechen's dark, profound energy. Xianxia barely fended it off even with the help of sealing cloud-locking sun. So he could definitely imagine what the result would have been if he had taken that attack directly. Xianxia's body was ablaze, and he flickered brilliantly in the world of darkness that had devoured all light. As such, Fen Juechen did not even need to use his spiritual perception to find Xianxia. He could lock onto his position almost instantly. He had seen Xianxia being swallowed up by the night devil heaven burial with his own two eyes. Yet with the same pair of eyes, he had also seen Xianxia escape from within the darkness. He could hardly see a scratch left by the corrosive darkness on Xianxia's entire body. Xianxia's profound energy aura was only at the 5th level of the Emperor Profound Realm, and Fen Juechen himself was already at the 6th level of the Sovereign Profound Realm. He had exceeded Xianxia by more than 2 entire realms. Destroying him should have been as easy as scattering dust. Yet what he was truly unable to accept or believe was that he had clearly used all his power to attack, but he had not even managed to harm his opponent at all. Instead, the only thing he received in return was the grating laughter and contemptuous disdain of his opponent. In his state of extreme shock and humiliation, Fen Juechen's hate and killing intent once again soared dramatically as he became the embodiment of carnage and vengeance. The jet-black sword in his hand swiftly pierced towards Xianxia. As the jet-black sword swept an arc in front of Xianxia's body, space shattered like glass. Aside from the grating sound of space being torn apart, Xianxia could also faintly hear something that sounded like the wailing of evil spirits. Ocean waves surged into the sky as pitch-black sword beams flashed in nightmarish splendor, wildly sweeping towards Xianxia. Every single sword beam left a black scar in the air that did not dissipate until a long while later. Xianxia combined Star God's broken shadow and extreme mirage lightning as he received Fen Juechen's attacks. Sometimes he was an afterimage, other times he was a tempest, completely dodging every single one of Fen Juechen's attacks. However, the waves of dark, profound energy still swept across his body after every attack, causing his body and mind to undergo incomparable suffering. Fortunately for Xianxia, it was still within the limit of what he could endure. After all, even though his profound strength was low, he still possessed the body of the Dragon God and the Dragon God's soul. At the same time, his phoenix flames and golden crow flames could counteract this dark, profound energy to a certain degree. But Xianxia himself was currently unaware of it. Die, I am going to rip your body to shreds. The dark, profound energy in the sky swiftly gathered into rolling clouds of darkness. As they roiled, they released an aura which evoked a feeling that the end of the world was imminent. Amidst Fen Juechen's hoarse cries, the dark aura of the entire dark domain was frantically released, sweeping out in a gigantic wave that threatened to engulf everything and swiftly becoming a terrifying storm of darkness. In an instant, the surrounding space was easily torn apart as it collapsed and shattered, causing spatial energy to wildly surge outwards from the rifts in space. This energy melded with the storm of darkness, becoming an even more terrifying pitch-black cyclone that swept towards Xianxia. Even when this dark whirlwind was still more than 300 meters away, Xianxia could already smell the thick stench of hell coming from it. As his eyes focused, he prepared to use extreme mirage lightning to swiftly flee away from this attack. However, the ripping force of that dark whirlwind was extremely terrifying. Not only did it prevent him from fleeing, it even forcefully drew him towards it. Rip! All the clothes on Xianxia's body were ripped to shreds. His pupils fiercely contracted, and he did not hesitate any longer. He instantly opened the gate of purgatory as he used sealing cloud-locking sun once more. Scree! The dark cyclone smashed against the evil god barrier, sweeping Xianxia away along with it. In an instant, he had already been swept several kilometers away, and the shattering spatial distortion continued for several kilometers as well. A pitch-black streak of darkness stretched across the distorted space, and it only slowly dissipated after more than 10 breaths had passed. When the dark cyclone had finally ceased wreaking havoc, sealing cloud-locking sun had completely collapsed as well. All the energy and blood in Xianxia's body surged wildly. He fiercely sucked in a breath of air as he forcibly suppressed the energy and blood that raged inside his body. After that, he crooked a finger towards the mutely staring Fen Juechen once again. Continue. It has almost been 15 minutes already, and I have only been defending. I haven't attacked even once, yet you're actually unable to leave a single mark on my body. Before this, you were crowing so arrogantly, but who would have thought that? Tusk. Chach? Fen Juechen cried hysterically before he morphed into a black shadow and shot towards Xianxia. Before he even arrived, a giant, pitch-black hand had already descended from the sky and fiercely grabbed at Xianxia's head. At this moment, if one were to look down at the profound sky eastern ocean from far above, then they would see a gigantic jet-black shadow appear in the middle of the eastern ocean region. Moreover, at the borders of that shadow, huge waves soared skyward as they roiled and surged without ceasing. Ah, so that's how it is. Right now, Jasmine had completely understood what method Xianxia had chosen to deal with Fen Juechen even though his strength was inferior. Xianxia decided to focus solely on defense for a very long time, so Fen Juechen would exhaust most of his profound energy. Once Fen Juechen's strength was nearly exhausted, Xianxia would deliver a counterstrike with all of his might. This kind of tactic, if used by another person, could not even be called a tactic anymore. Not to mention opponents who were stronger, even if one were to fight someone at the same strength or even someone slightly weaker. Not only would this tactic not succeed, it would also put oneself in an inferior position. As the battle progressed, one would be completely suppressed by their opponent, not even having the chance to counterattack. Only Xianxia alone could make this tactic work. Furthermore, when facing someone like Fen Juechen, the chances of it successfully working would dramatically increase. Since Xianxia possessed both the Star God's Broken Shadow and Extreme Mirage Lightning, even though his profound strength was nowhere near Fen Juechen's, his ability to dodge and flee was far superior. Therefore, he could easily dodge Fen Juechen's attacks, causing the latter to waste his energy. When Xianxia could not avoid an attack, he could forcibly defend against it by activating Sealing Cloud-Locking Sun for a short period of time. On the other hand, Fen Juechen had an extremely strong ego, causing him to have an extremely arrogant and conceited temperament. Because of that, he was easily agitated. Under the influence of Xianxia's ceaseless taunts, Fen Juechen would continue to burn with fury and be overcome with killing intent. Every time he attacked, Fen Juechen would not hesitate to use all of his power, all for the sake of defeating and even killing Xianxia within the shortest amount of time. Furthermore, Fen Juechen was still far too young, so even though his profound strength had undergone an explosive growth, his battle experience, finesse, and state of mind was still far inferior to Xianxia's. The more his attacks failed, the more frustrated he would grow, provoking him to continue putting all of his power into every strike. This was exactly what Xianxia had spoken about. Fen Juechen's weakness in his personality. Moreover, the energy consumption of Star God's Broken Shadow and Extreme Mirage Lightning was extremely small. And even though Sealing Cloud-Locking Sun did use an enormous amount of energy, Xianxia would only activate it when he needed to. So his total consumption of energy was far lower than that of Fen Juechen, who kept pouring everything into his attacks. Aside from all of these factors, one important point was left unspoken, and that was Xianxia's physical recovery rate and profound energy recovery rate were far superior to Fen Juechen's. With the power of the Rage God and the body of the Dragon God, his physical recovery rate and profound energy recovery rate was at least 5 times greater than that of Fen Juechen's. So, as long as Xianxia did not sustain injuries that were too serious, it was impossible for ordinary injuries to affect him in any way. Furthermore, as the exhaustion of Fen Juechen's profound energy intensified, his attacks would naturally begin to weaken. So the pressure Xianxia had to endure would also gradually become weaker and weaker as time passed. In the end, his recovery rate might very well exceed the rate at which he was consuming energy. At that point, he would begin his counterassault against Fen Juechen. This tactic was something that simply could not be seen through, because no one would think that a person with a profound strength far weaker than them would possess such a terrifying recovery ability. If normal profound practitioners attempted to do so, it would be no different from courting death. At the same time, it was also very difficult to put it into practice, because the moment the other party stopped attacking, this tactic would fail. There were very few people who were so stubborn and single-minded that they would continue to attack at full force, even after wasting a large amount of profound energy on failed attacks. But an extremely arrogant person like Fen Juechen was clearly an exception to the rule. Just as Xianxia had predicted, in his rage and agitation, Fen Juechen unleashed all of his profound strength as he frantically threw out one dark profound energy attack after another. Hand of Darkness, Jet Black Sword, Lightless Eternal Night, Night Devil Heaven Burial. Every single attack he made was done using all of his strength, hate, and killing intent. He did not hold anything back. Not only did the gigantic ocean region turn pitch black, but it had also been stirred up so much that it was completely overturned. Yet Xianxia had continuously used his bizarre movement skills and his incomparably strong defensive profound skills to dodge or block those attacks. Under the relentless torrent of attacks, Xianxia's clothes had already been torn to shreds, and innumerable wounds which radiated black light had appeared all over his body. But in the end, Xianxia had not sustained a single injury that could severely impair him. All Fen Juechen received in return was Xianxia's contempt and derision, mocking Fen Juechen's overestimation of himself, and how he was nothing more than that. The explosive growth in profound strength that caused Fen Juechen to leap from the spirit profound realm to sovereign profound realm had naturally caused his self-esteem to surge explosively. Now, facing someone that he had to kill, the self-confidence and pride that had swelled countless times were swiftly being grounded into dust. Given his extremely strong ego, the feeling that he endured right now was even more unbearable than the feeling he endured when he was planted firmly below Xianxia's foot. Even more unbearable was that, from beginning to end, Xianxia had done as he had said. He had not retaliated at all. It was clear that he had no regard for Fen Juechen in the first place. D-I-E-E. As Fen Juechen emitted a hoarse roar, kilometers of the ocean region around him instantly exploded outwards as water filled the sky. The boom akin to rolling thunder could be heard in floating Cloud City that was several hundred kilometers away. Die, boom, 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 boom. Continuous sounds of explosions reached floating Cloud City from the far east. Even though it was extremely far away, it was still so overwhelming that it made the hearts of the people so uncomfortable that they felt as if they were going to burst. If you told the people of floating Cloud City that this was the sound of two people fighting each other 300 kilometers away, absolutely no one would believe it. This incredibly overwhelming sound of explosions was not only frequent, it continued for 2 entire hours and did not stop at all. Many citizens of floating Cloud City went to the east side of the city to try and find its source by looking to the east. SSSS, SSSS. 2 long, pitch-black fissures appeared on Xianxia's afterimage. Each slash of Fen Juechen's attack were accompanied by an icy dark, profound energy. Yet after slashing over 10 times like a fierce storm, all he had hit were Xianxia's afterimages. When the last attack landed, the waves were slashed open harshly, but Xianxia's figure got further away. Ooh-ah! The waves surged. A huge, pitch-black, profound energy storm caused the clouds to change color, and it charged towards Xianxia with a fearful aura. Xianxia focused his gaze, crossed his arms before his chest, and roared deeply. Bang! The dark, profound energy storm violently collided with Xianxia's body, sending him tumbling away. A giant, 3-kilometer-long reef was sent flying into the air from directly below Xianxia. Before it could land, it was immediately turned into a fine powder within the energy storm. Xianxia purposely didn't defend. His body was shot 3 or 4 kilometers away by the shock of the dark, profound energy. When he stopped, he looked at his arms. The ends of his arms had been burnt black. There was no bleeding or pain. He couldn't even feel his skin and flesh. Whoosh! Phoenix flames ignited on his arms, dispersing the strange, pitch-black darkness in the blink of an eye and revealing his flesh which had previously been shrouded. The speed at which his body regenerated had already surpassed the limit of what should have been possible. Fen Juechen, it's been 3 hours. You've really disappointed me. Ha 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 ha. Xianxia laughed wildly, but not a single part of his body had relaxed. Every time there was a gap between Fen Juechen's attacks, Xianxia would mercilessly ridicule him as if only he himself was a truly strong practitioner. He teased and humiliated his opponent as if he were a cat playing with a mouse. However, in his heart, Xianxia knew that the actual situation was not like that. As time passed, Fen Juechen became increasingly irritated. His roars had long since become hoarse, and the dark, profound energy released by his body had already become a lot weaker. Nonetheless, his attacks were still incomparably fierce. Every strike was made with no care for his own life. His entire person had become an enraged madman. The only image within his blood-red eyes was Xianxi's figure. His mind and soul only had one thought, and that was to kill Xianxi. SSSS. A 30-meter-long sword beam horizontally sliced out, savagely and ruthlessly tearing through the sky. Xianxi's figure swayed slightly, then suddenly reappeared above the surface of the ocean 150 meters below. A quiet sigh suddenly exited his mouth as he watched Fen Juechen roar and charge at him yet again. Just based on profound energy, Fen Juechen indeed completely surpassed him. If he fought with him head-to-head, even though he would not necessarily be defeated in a short amount of time, he would definitely lose. But Fen Juechen was just too young, and his temperament was far too extreme. He was originally from Burning Heaven clan. As the Burning Heaven clan's young master, he naturally wouldn't have experienced a battle of life and death. Moreover, after he acquired the powerful, dark, profound energy, he had yet to encounter an opponent who could match him. As for Xianxi, not only did he have the experience from 2 lifetimes, he had also experienced many life and death battles. Earlier, Fen Juechen had roared that he had gone through hell. But all of the things that Xianxi had suffered through were things that even Fen Juechen would never be able to imagine. Therefore, even though his strength surpassed Xianxi, it didn't mean that he was be able to beat Xianxi. In the Azure Cloud continent, there had been many with strength far beyond Xianxi's. Yet a countless number of them had ended up falling at Xianxi's hand anyway. "Looks like we didn't need 8 hours at all," Xianxi spoke in a low voice. He focused his mind and used all of his strength to deal with Fen Juechen, who was closing the distance to him like a beast. Floating Cloud City, Xiao Clan. Number 1 under heaven was floating in the air, looking to the east silently. To normal citizens of Floating Cloud City, the explosive bursting and ripping sounds were just strange sounds in the distance. But he knew that, behind every sound, shocking power was hidden. "The fight has been going on for 4 whole hours. Number 1 under heaven lowered his eyebrows and said in a low voice. Brother Yun was even able to wound Duke Hua in 1 strike with his sword. To think that the strength of that young Fen Juechen had actually reached such a shocking degree. And he is not someone from the sacred grounds. 4 hours have passed, yet it is still so intense, so scary." Number 7 under heaven's 2 hands subconsciously wrapped around her stomach as she felt frightened for the baby in her womb. "Big brother is strong, he will definitely not lose." Xiao Yun yelled confidently, yet his voice was trembling a little. "Little aunt, don't worry, nothing will happen to big brother Yun. Even if he can't beat Fen Juechen, he can use the profound arc and come back immediately." Feng Zuer continuously comforted Xiao Lingxi, because Xiao Lingxi's aura had been chaotic this entire time. Her expression had yet to relax for a moment, and her face was filled with worry, terror, and fear. Her forehead had also become covered with a fine layer of sweat. Xiao Lingxi's hands had been gripping Feng Zuer's snow robe very tightly. She begged once again, "Zuer, please bring me over there. I am so worried. Big brother Yun, he will definitely be safe," Feng Zuer said, comforting her. Then she bit her lips softly. In her heart, she was not any less worried than Xiao Lingxi. On top of that, she had heard Xianxi himself say that. He was not an opponent for Fen Juechen. Nothing bad can happen to little Qi. The same goes for big brother Fen. Both of them have to be safe. Fen Juechen really isn't a bad guy. He even saved me twice. If he was killed by little Qi, I will never have any peace of mind again. I must go and stop them. They have already fought for so long, it's enough." Xiao Lingxi's voice trembled as she began to panic. The sounds coming from the east clearly described just how cruel and violent the fight of hatred had become. It was probable that the battle between Fen Juechen and Xianxi would only stop when one of them died. If Xianxi died, she would no longer want to live. However, if Fen Juechen died, it would similarly be hard for her to accept. But I promised Big Brother Yun. I need to listen to Big Brother Yun's words." Feng Zuer panicked and shook her head. At this moment, the oppressive sounds of explosive combat from the east suddenly stopped. Even after a long time, it didn't resume. The faint oppressive force they felt from the battle that was hundreds of kilometers away had even disappeared at this time. "Ah, is it finally over?" Xiao Yun said in a low voice, and at the same time everyone's expressions became serious. Since the fight had lasted a full 4 hours, it was impossible for them to predict just how tragic the outcome would be. Feng Zuer hurriedly picked up her sound transmission jade and asked in a very nervous tone, Brother Yun, are you okay? Did you beat him? Each breath after the transmission felt suffocating as they waited for a response. However, Yun Chi's voice quickly transmitted back. Rest assured, I am fine. After all, there's no way anything would happen to me. You all don't need to worry at all. I will return in another 2 hours at most. Yun Chi's voice was very relaxed and full of confidence. A faint chuckle could seemingly be heard as well. At that instant, everyone felt relieved. Profound skies, eastern ocean. Yun Chi slowly put away his sound transmission jade, then coldly looked at Fen Juechen in front of him. Yun Chi's hair had become completely disheveled, and there were no longer any clothes covering his body. Other than the corners of his mouth, no blood was visible on his body. However, his body was covered in black marks from where his flesh had been charred. He was breathing heavily, but he was in a far better condition than Fen Juechen. Fen Juechen had stopped attacking, but his eyes were still wolf-like. His chest intensely heaved up and down as if it could explode at any time. The aura surrounding his body was much weaker than it was at the beginning, but the despair, violence, coldness, and killing intent still remained. You are purposely consuming my strength? A bloody light flashed through Fen Juechen's pitch-black pupils. Fen Juechen was proud and self-confident. Furthermore, he held extreme hatred and murderous intent for Yun Chi. Thus, it had been very easy for Yun Chi to enrage him and cause him to attack in a wild rage. As he attacked and failed, it had only made him even more angry. These 4 hours, he had madly attacked Yun Chi constantly, and the profound energy surrounding his body had decreased by more than 60%. As for Yun Chi, his profound energy had only decreased by less than 30%. The sword strike just now had churned up huge waves in a 3-kilometer radius. When the cold seawater descended, it had drenched Fen Juechen's entire body, shocking him as the chill assaulted his mind. However, this had also cleared up his mind, causing him to suddenly realize Yun Chi's true intention. Yun Chi remained calm as he said with smile, "Right. In the end, you managed to see through it after all. However, it took you a full 4 hours of battle to realize this. You truly cannot be considered intelligent." Fen Juechen scoffed, and the pitch-black sword in his hands made terrifying sounds. "The current you is just garbage that must die. No matter what mind games you use today, you can stop thinking about leaving here alive. My, looks like even saying you are not intelligent is flattering you." Yun Chi's expression was a relaxing, slight smile. "I only defended without attacking during these 4 hours of your continuous attacks, but I am not dead, and they didn't cause a serious injury. Even an idiot should understand by now that, with my movement skill and speed, you wanting to kill me now is simply foolish nonsense." Earlier, when Fen Juechen had gone entirely the offensive, his strength and momentum had both been frightening. But Yun Chi now had Fen Juechen completely figured out. Fen Juechen's movement skills and speed were undeniably at least level below him. Long before this battle, Yun Chi had decided to use this method to deal with Fen Juechen. He believed in his superior movement skills and speed, and hoped that they would give him an advantage currently. It seemed that not only did this advantage exist, it was also greater than he had expected. Now, since Fen Juechen had noticed it, he naturally couldn't continue doing so. Yun Chi already decided to continue defending, not attacking. Clang! Red light flickered, and the heaven-smiting sword was in Yun Chi's hands once again. At that instant, under the incomparably tyrannical aura of the sword, the ocean's waves and howling wind died down, as if they had been frozen still. An indifferent smile emerged on Yun Chi's face as he coldly sneered and said in a low voice, "Not only that today, the one who will not be leaving here alive is you." "You want to engage him head-on?" Jasmine asked softly. "Even though he has already exhausted more than half of his profound energy, it probably hasn't dropped to the level of your expectations. If the present you wants to forcibly engage him in direct combat, it is still too much to ask." "It doesn't matter," Yun Chi said in an assured manner. "Even though his profound strength is absurdly powerful, he still hasn't been able to gain full mastery over this new power. Furthermore, the rate that he is exhausting his profound energy is clearly far higher than normal. Before this, I only defended without attacking, yet he practically hurt himself from the backlash of his attacks a few times. It appears his hatred has drowned out his rationality. He was too anxious for success, and he focused only on getting stronger, neglecting to take time to stabilize himself. Fen Juechen's explosive increase in profound energy was due to him absorbing and fusing with what Jasmine called the devil origin, and was not something that he had gained through his own cultivation. Moreover, he had only had a short period of time to increase his power, so it was clear that his body had not completely merged with the devil origin yet. As a result, he had yet to obtain complete mastery over his new power. "Oh, so you've already noticed this," Jasmine said blandly. "Coupled with my weapon's superiority and the weakness in his personality, even if he still has nearly 40% of his power left, there is still a possibility that I can defeat him in direct combat." Holding the heaven-smiting sword in a two-handed grip, Xianxia made a normal arc through the air with the sword. In a split second, the ocean beneath Xianxia's feet churned as waves exploded out, and an extremely heavy and overwhelmingly tyrannical aura shot out over an area that was hundreds of kilometers wide. All of the ocean life in the area curled up in terror. I was as though they had been fixed in place, for they didn't dare move an inch. In that instant, it seemed as if an ancient demon god had suddenly descended from above, enshrouding the earth in its terrible majesty. Fen Juechen's pupils suddenly contracted, his cold gaze forcibly drawn, then locked onto the vermilion greatsword in Xianxia's hands. Xianxia's aura did not create the least bit of pressure for him at all, but the moment that vermilion greatsword appeared in Xianxia's hands, he could clearly feel an oppressive and stifling sensation. Furthermore, as he focused his gaze on that sword, his energy was suddenly thrown into turmoil as an horribly unpleasant sensation filled his entire body. This sensation did not fade as he circulated his profound energy, instead seeming to intensify for some reason. It reached the point where it was so unbearable that it as if something was viciously ripping his organs and soul apart. Fen Juechen's face twisted violently, and he abruptly turned his gaze aside. Immediately, the unbearable feeling began to lessen. However, his discomfort still remained. The difference between the time when he had first met her on the primordial profound arc and the current hunger who had pigged out recently was simply incomparable. The power of the heaven-smiting sword was completely different as well. It had even begun to radiate a faint aura of majesty and power capable of shaking the heavens and the earth. However, this change was not entirely a good thing for Xianxia, as the heaven-smiting sword's rate of growth had already far outstripped his own growth rate. Furthermore, he had recently been pouring all of his time and effort into raising the profound strength of the frozen Asgard ladies, and had not touched the heaven-smiting sword in nearly 3 months. So now that he held the heaven-smiting sword in his hands, he instead felt an extremely large strain. It even felt as though he might lose his grip on it. Just how many things had hunger stolen to eat during these 3 months? Could it be that she had actually snacked on one of the Overlord swords? And even if one did not take into account the peerless sword power of the heaven-smiting sword, the sword imparted the feeling that it was as heavy as a mountain. Xianxia's conservative estimate was that the heaven-smiting sword was at least 500,000 kilograms. Xianxia's expression remained completely calm, and his posture was that of someone confident in their victory. He had taken notice of Fen Juechen's bizarre reaction when the heaven-smiting sword had made its appearance. He had some suspicions regarding that reaction, however he did not take them to heart. This sword's full name is the Heaven-Smiting Devil Slayer Sword, so let me bear witness to how long you can endure its presence. And immediately after Xianxia spoke, he let out a low roar. He opened the purgatory gate, and all of the profound energy in his body violently surged. Flames burned high in the sky as the heaven-smiting sword struck downwards. Given his profound energy being far from the depth and thickness of Fen Juechen's, and the huge amount of energy exhausted holding the current heaven-smiting sword, he could not afford to tarry any longer. It was a straightforward attack without any flourish or profound skill, yet it held all of the power in Xianxia's body. The oppressive power of the attack was so large that it seemed like there was a mountain crashing down from the sky. Fen Juechen's gaze grew cold and focused as he released a black light that was even darker than the darkest of nights from every orifice of his body. The sword in his hand was also fully wrapped in black light. An alarmingly wild and violent dark, profound energy crazily surged from the sword, releasing an awful screech as it tore through space to meet the oncoming heaven-smiting sword. Clashing directly with a heavy sword was definitely not a smart move. In fact, it could even be called an extremely stupid move. But even if Fen Juechen had been aware of this, he still would have made the same decision anyway, all because of his strong pride and ego, and this was exactly the weakness in his personality that Xianxia had spoken of. Clang! Both swords smashed together, and the sound of metal on metal ripped through the clouds as it shook the skies and ocean. The waters below instantly morphed into a hellish disaster zone that made ordinary hurricanes seem tame. Hundreds of gigantic waves screamed to life as they surged towards the heavens. Amidst the gargantuan churning waves, the clash between the scarlet red and the pitch-black light was still extremely glaring and obvious. At the point where the lights intersected, the two swords were still locked in a deadly struggle. The flaming heaven-smiting sword still radiated its divine might, while the black sword in Fen Juechen's hand, despite being already bent like a crescent moon, refused to break as it endured the attack of the heaven-smiting sword. The gazes of both parties swept past their blades as they glared at each other, their faces not more than a meter away from each other. One's face was calm while the other's was ice-cold. However, in their hearts, they were filled with shock and alarm. Xianxia was astonished that Fen Juechen, who had already exhausted most of his profound energy and only had the Emperor Profound Black Sword, had able to actually block an attack that he had delivered at full force with the heaven-smiting sword. Furthermore, with the support of his incomparably powerful profound strength, the sword had not even snapped. Meanwhile, Fen Juechen was even more shocked that Xianxia, who only had the aura of Emperor Profound Realm Practitioner, could actually take a strike from his sword at full strength as well. The black sword in Fen Juechen's hand was originally an Earth Profound sword. However, in the years where Fen Juechen's strength had grown by leaps and pounds, this Earth Profound sword had undergone a fundamental change under the influence of the dark profound energy that he had been releasing. And in the short span of a few years, it had absorbed a large amount of dark profound energy, resulting in it growing into a low-grade Emperor Profound sword. While an Emperor Profound sword could be considered a monarch of swords within the Blue Wind Nation, and it would even still be considered an exquisite treasure among the swords of the Profound Sky Continent, if it were to go up against Xianxia's heaven-smiting sword without a shadow of doubt. Xianxia had the absolute advantage when it came to weapons, and despite this fact, Fen Juechen was still able to fully block Xianxia's attack. So it was clear that even though his profound energy had been largely exhausted, he definitely still surpassed Xianxia in terms of strength. Fen Juechen's eyes grew so sinister that they looked like the eyes of a feral, bloodthirsty wolf. The black light surrounding his body fiercely swelled up once more. It was at this moment, however, that he suddenly felt the dark, profound energy in his body riot, as if it had received some kind of trauma. Not only did the black light surrounding his sword fail to flare up, it even began to abruptly twist and warp in the air. As it was twisting and warping, bits of the black light began to disappear as though being silently swallowed an invisible black hole. The pressure coming off Fen Juechen suddenly weakened. Xianxia's eyes grew focused as the golden crow flames in his body explosively surged forth while he swept the heaven-smiting sword forward once again. Fen Juechen let out a dull moan as a huge force rammed into his chest, ruthlessly flinging aside his sword arm. His body shook in the wind like a leaf as he was blasted far away. Oh, Xianxia had been concentrating his heart and mind, so he had not noticed the changes in Fen Juechen's dark, profound energy. But Jasmine had witnessed the whole event, and a strange light immediately flashed in the depths of her eyes. The deadlock between the two evenly matched opponents had lasted for only a short period of time, and was broken when Fen Juechen could no longer maintain the pressure. This was the first instance where both parties had officially clashed, but Fen Juechen, who had the absolute advantage in profound strength, was sent flying by Xianxia, who now had the absolute advantage in weaponry. Xianxia also felt greatly shocked that he had been able to gain the upper hand so easily. He gave a cold laugh and lifted up the heaven-smiting sword as he rushed forward like a maelstrom. Fen Juechen, it looks like you're really not much after all. Let's see how many blows you can take. Fen Juechen somersaulted backwards in the air many times before he finally managed to stabilize himself in the air. The heavy sword storm that Xianxia had smashed out was no small thing. Even though Fen Juechen had only been smashed aside by the sword wind, it had caused all the blood and energy in his body to churn, practically causing his internal organs to flip over. Normally, this would only have been a trivial injury to him. Even if he received an injury that was 10 times worse, he would not even raise an eyebrow. But this time, for some unfathomable reason, that weird, unpleasant sensation surfaced again, causing him to feel dizzy and nauseous. Xianxia roared as he drew close and smashed down the heaven-smiting sword, carrying with it the aura of a mountain once again. Fen Juechen's pupils released a blood-red light as all of the dark, profound energy in his body exploded forth crazily. Clang. The immense energy storm swept out in all directions, and a spatial ripple that was a full 30 meters wide spread out from the epicenter of the clash. The heaven-smiting sword once again clashed with the black sword. This time the black sword was nearly bent into a black-colored full moon. The sword blade quivered as it let out a shrill that was reminiscent of wailing ghosts. The clash between both swords, once again, did not persist. After a fraction of a second, the power of the black sword swiftly receded once more. Boom! The flames and the black light simultaneously exploded, both people being shot out in opposite directions. Xianxia simply flipped in the air before regaining control over his balance, yet Fen Juechen still flew far into the distance. The black sword in his hand had already been bent to an alarming angle, and it had been nearly snapped altogether. Xianxia, who had already regained his balance, did not give the disadvantaged Fen Juechen a chance to even catch his breath. He activated extreme mirage lightning, and his body morphed into a black-colored streak of lightning, as the heaven-smiting sword fiercely smashed down once again, carrying with it the howl of thunder. Clank, boom, boom. It was as if the hammer of the heavens had come fiercely crashing down as horrifying ripples of sound rebounded along the ocean waves, shaking the sky. Xianxia's every sword stroke caused Fen Juechen to retreat rapidly. The black sword in his hand was bent more and more out of shape with every blow, yet it never snapped. As it nearly bent in a circle from every stroke, Fen Juechen's face ran through a gamut of expressions as it twisted up, warped in pain, showing extreme discontent malevolence. Boom, boom, boom. Amidst the huge noises that continued to shake the sky, Fen Juechen had been smashed 5 kilometers back. All of the blood and energy in his body were churning, and crimson-black blood continued to spew from his mouth. From the moment Xianxia had unveiled the heaven-smiting sword, Fen Juechen had been at a complete disadvantage since the very first stroke. And he basically only had the power to fend off Xianxia's blows, and right now even fending off those blows were a bigger and bigger ask. Phoenix Sky Wolf slash! Boom! The howl of the Sky Wolf intertwined together with the cry of the Phoenix as the attack ripped through the sky. Fen Juechen shot out like a falling star as he fiercely smashed into a small reef that was several kilometers away, causing the reef to be completely obliterated. Behind him, an extremely deep trench had been dug across the surface of the ocean, and it did not disappear for a long time. It was as if this large patch of ocean had been directly cut in half. Cough, cough, cough. Fen Juechen stood on the surface of the sea as he staggered to his feet and continued to cough out blood that was clearly darker than a normal person's. What is going on? What is wrong with my power? Why would it suddenly go out of control? Why would it suddenly disappear? Just what was going on? Behind him, a wild gale swiftly drew close. Fen Juechen stubbornly forced down a mouthful of stale blood. As he turned around, he exuded a baleful aura which rushed out to the heavens. The first thing he looked at was not Xianxia, but the gigantic vermilion greatsword that was almost as big as Xianxia's body. Immediately, all the blood and energy in his body began to frantically churn once again, and the unbearable sensation of his soul getting stabbed once again assaulted him. In that instant, he finally noticed something. It was Xianxia's sword. That bizarre, unpleasant sensation he had felt always occurred when his gaze or power had come into contact with that sword. It was precisely when his own sword had come into contact with Xianxia's sword that his profound energy suddenly spiraled out of control and disappeared as if it had been devoured. That sword is actually able to restrain my power. Clouds could not be seen for kilometers on end, and the skies were completely clear. Yet anyone in Floating Cloud City would be able to see a heavy layer of darkness hovering in the skies to the east of them. It was so gloomy that it threatened to sink straight down, and if one were to look at it, it would cause that person's chest to feel heavy and tight. Boom, boom, boom. The never-ending sound of explosions rang out from the east, and each explosion sounded heavier than the last. One could even feel an incredibly intense and frenzied aura emanating from there. It started again. Number 1 under heaven muttered under his breath as an astonished expression surfaced on his face once again. Zhuor! Xiao Lingxi's heart simply could not remain calm, and the explosions that continued to ring out were more than she could bear. Both of her hands tightly gripped Feng Zhuor's snowy sleeve. Hurry up and bring me there. They really can't continue fighting any longer. I am the reason for their enmity. One of them is Little Qi, and the other one is the person who has saved me twice. If anything happens to either of them, I won't be able to live it down for the rest of my life. Zhuor, I'm begging you, please bring me there. Please. But, Feng Zuer's heart was also agitated and anxious, and she had nearly been seized by the impulse to rush out to the battleground more than 10 times already. Zuer, the reason why little Qi does not want me close by is that he is afraid that he might hurt me by accident. If Zuer is there to protect me, then there won't be a problem no matter how close I get. Furthermore, Zuer, you're also very worried for little Qi, right? Since they've already fought for so long, it has truly been enough already. If they continue to fight each other, what if? Feng Zuer's already wavering resolve completely collapsed in that instant, without even mentioning the need to protect Xianxia from the aftershocks of the clashes. If Yun Qi and Fen Juechen combined their powers and attacked Zuer, she would still be able to protect Xianxia given her current level of strength. I understand. Little Ant, you must remember to hold on to me tightly. Feng Zuer gave a gentle wave of her snowy hand, causing Xianxia's body to rise above the ground. A gust of fragrant wind blew as she shot towards the dark patch of sky in the east as quickly as possible. His aura suddenly started fluctuating, almost as if he lost some control over himself. It looks like the negative side effect of forcibly merging with an exceedingly strong source of devil profound energy was more severe than I thought, or perhaps I thought too highly of him in the first place. Yun Qi hauled the heaven-smiting sword behind him as he swiftly rushed toward Fen Juechen, who had been blasted far away. He had originally thought that, the moment he began to face Fen Juechen in direct combat, he would be drawn into a bitter, fierce battle. He never thought that he would gain such a huge advantage from the very beginning. For every clash after the first, Fen Juechen was not only completely suppressed, but his profound energy grew more and more chaotic. It also grew weaker and weaker. After he had endured more than 10 sword blasts, he had sustained external and internal injuries throughout his body. And those injuries were definitely not superficial. This entire series of events and the subsequent result was something that Yun Qi had never expected to happen. He had even begun to feel that his previous caution and meticulous planning had been pointless. Don't drop your guard. This definitely isn't the full extent of his power. Devote all your strength to crippling him, Jasmine yelled in a low voice. At this moment, Yun Qi was already within 60 meters of Fen Juechen. Bringing along a power that could capsize the heavens, the heaven-smiting sword smashed down toward Fen Juechen. Fen Juechen's gaze was still as crazed and ferocious as it had previously been, and the sinister black blood splattered across his face, and body made him seem even more dreadful and tyrannical. As he faced Yun Qi's terrifying and peerless heavy sword blast once more, Fen Juechen chose not to forcefully take it head-on. The black light surrounding his body flashed as he unexpectedly retreated backwards. Fen Juechen's speed could not match up to Yun Qi's in the first place. Now that his profound energy was in complete disarray and he was heavily injured, his speed had taken a huge hit. How would it be possible for him to easily dodge Yun Qi's attack? He barely managed to dodge Yun Qi's first strike, but the second strike directly smashed toward his chest. He had no choice but to circulate all of the profound energy in his body as he raised his black sword to block the blow. Boom! Fen Juechen's body shuddered violently as the space around him trembled. It was exactly the same as it was the last few times. The profound energy he had infused into his dark blade would receive a tremendous shock each time it came into contact with the heaven-smiting sword, and it would dissipate swiftly like a terrified spirit. This caused the might of the heavy sword, which originally could have been resisted, to smash downward. And as another huge explosion rang through the air, his body flew like a cannonball as it fiercely shot toward the waters below. In the next instant, Fen Juechen was already rushing into the air as a huge pillar of water exploded out behind him. His gaze grew even more ferocious and violent. Most of the veins in his arms had exploded, and his sword hand trembled so greatly that he could barely hold onto his pitch-black sword. His face, which was covered in blood, twisted as the black-colored profound energy that his body was releasing also began to twist. At this moment, the aura he released was like that of a berserk devil who had been completely consumed by fury, only being fueled by bone-cutting hatred. I was actually this pathetic. How is it possible that I lost to you? Fen Juechen let out a low moan. His voice was so hoarse and deep that it sounded like it belonged to a demon from hell. Night Devil Heaven Burial. Fen Juechen roared mournfully as all of the black profound light surrounding his body abruptly exploded outward. A row of gigantic waves exploded toward the sky, carrying a darkness that could blot out the sky as they rushed towards Xianxia. Night Devil Heaven Burial was a unique domain that operated on the concepts of darkness and devouring. When Fen Juechen had initially released it, Xianxia managed to struggle free of it. Now that Fen Juechen's profound energy was in a state of disarray, and he had exhausted most of it, the power of the same Night Devil Heaven Burial had weakened by several magnitudes. The world around Xianxia instantly turned pitch black, but he was not the least bit flustered by this. The heaven-smiting sword in his hand began to burn with the glaring flames of the golden crow. He fiercely slashed the air around him, and as the heaven-smiting sword danced wildly in the air, scarlet trenches were being torn into the newly birthed domain of darkness. In the blink of an eye, it was already ripped to shreds. Even though the scorching golden crow flames were shredding layer after layer of this domain apart, it did not suppress the darkness which shrouded the heavens and the earth. At this moment, an ice-cold aura that seemed to originate from the very depths of the netherworld itself suddenly shot toward Xianxia's back. Fen Juechen had been covered by the dark domain, and he had even blended his aura with that of the domain. But it was still not enough to escape Xianxia's spiritual perception. Yet Xianxia did not choose to flee. Instead, he shifted his vital organs slightly as he allowed the cold light to approach him. Bang! A black sword that was completely shrouded in black light cut into Xianxia's right shoulder. The sword easily sliced through his flesh, but the moment it hit his bones, an extremely deep, dull sound of metal striking bone could be heard. Fen Juechen felt as if he had smashed his sword against a boulder that was countless times stronger than refined steel. He had originally thought that he could take one of Xianxia's arms with this sword strike, but now he actually could not even push his sword an inch further. Xianxia's bones were infused with the dragon god's marrow and had been tempered by enduring the spatial storm for 18 months. They could be considered the toughest and most resilient things in the entire profound sky continent. Furthermore, the heaven-smiting sword whistled through the darkness at the same time, and it solidly smashed into Fen Juechen's body. A strange red light that escaped Xianxia's notice appeared on the vermilion sword as it burst into Fen Juechen's body along with frenzied profound energy. Boom. Even if it was a Fen Juechen that was at the peak of his powers, he would still sustain heavy injuries if he took a sword blast from Xianxia's heaven-smiting sword at full strength. Amidst the explosions which caused the surface of the ocean to vibrate violently, more than 10 bones in Fen Juechen's chest were simultaneously shattered. His chest directly caved in as his entire person flew away like kite with a cut string, and a miserable howl of pain spilled from his lips. The blood in Fen Juechen's chest trashed about wildly, and he briefly lost consciousness. When he came to, he felt an extremely painful sensation flooding his body and soul. It was so agonizing that he nearly wished he was dead. Why did his sword have such a terrifying might? I only suffered a single blow from his sword, but why does it hurt so much? That it seems like my very soul is being ripped to shreds. The extreme pain not only tore at Fen Juechen's soul, but it also intensely agitated his primal instincts. He forcefully brought his tattered body to a stop. It seemed like he did not even care about the gaping wound in his chest as all of the black light surrounding his body surged, and the black energy in the surrounding area crazily gushed toward him. They formed a deep and gloomy black vortex in front of his body that resembled a black hole. Xianxia! Fen Juechen's hoarse voice was filled with so much pain that it no longer even resembled a human being. I will rip you to shreds. Fen Juechen howled wildly as he rushed toward Xianxia, carrying the black energy vortex along with him. He was using every last bit of strength he had to bury Xianxia in that merciless darkness forever. Xianxia did not retreat from this attack. Instead, both his arms slowly rose in the air as the flames on the heaven-smiting sword suddenly intensified and changed color, from a scarlet red into an eye-catching and captivating pure gold. Golden annihilation. Despite being engulfed by the darkness, the golden-colored flame still blazed with a glaring light and was not suppressed in the slightest. The moment the golden sword beam collided with the black whirlpool, only an extremely soft, muffled explosion could be heard. A split second later, the sinister, frightening, void-like black whirlpool was completely cut in half by those golden flames, nearly dividing in two. It was reduced to two black currents which streamed to either side of Xianxia's body, while the golden sword beam still rocketed forward, smashing into Fen Juechen's black sword. The black sword was not bent by the impact this time, and the golden sword beam was only stopped for a fraction of a second before cutting through the body of the black sword and brutally smashing into Fen Juechen's chest. Golden light immediately exploded outward crazily as the heavy sword energy and golden crow flames blasted mercilessly into Fen Juechen's body. WARGGHHHHH? An incomparably shrill wail tore through the heavens. Fen Juechen became a figure shrouded in golden flames as he was flung far away. A large amount of blood sprayed through the air, scattering everywhere. It was a ghastly sight indeed. Riyip, Fen Juechen's body fell into the sea, and large amounts of steam erupted from where he fell. The patch of the ocean that was more than 300 meters wide began to boil crazily, but the fires that were scouring Fen Juechen's body still did not die out. The flames of the golden crow would not be so easily extinguished by mere sea water. The two halves of the broken black sword also fell into the ocean almost at the same time, and in the blink of an eye, they disappeared as well. Pain, indescribable pain, was eating away at Fen Juechen's entire body at this moment. He felt like nearly every single cell in his body was being cut to pieces. This pain could even be compared to the pain he experienced all those years ago, during his forced absorption of the devil origin. Despite the pain he was going through, Fen Juechen's will refused to break, and he desperately released all his power in an attempt to extinguish the golden crow flames. It was only when he had sunk more than hundreds of meters that the golden crow flames finally weakened. But his entire body had nearly been burned to a near at that point. The physical pain he was experiencing was not even a fraction of the pain that his soul was suffering. His body continued to sink into the ocean, and his entire body hardly moved, as if it had become completely still. Yet his eyes were filled with pain, hatred, discontent, and humiliation. I clearly gained such incredible strength. Why am I still unable to kill him? Why did I still lose in such an ugly, humiliating manner? Why is it always like this? Vengeance. The only reason for me to go on living for the sake of vengeance. I went through hell and paid the most disastrous price. Could it be that I cannot even achieve the only thing that I am living for now? No. How could I lose to him? How could I lose? Fen Juechen's body continued to sink into the deep waters, but he finally began to move. His right arm began to slowly rise up as a bead of jet black blood rose up from his fingertip. His eyes focused on that bead of blood, and he mumbled a few words as if he were talking in his sleep. Daylight devour, lightless eternal night. On the surface of the waters, Xianxia had not retrieved the Fen Juechen who sunk deep into the ocean. Instead, he stood there, staring quietly at the water, his face solemn and grave because he was beginning to feel that something was amiss with the whole situation. To think that he could so easily injure Fen Juechen to such a serious extent. Even the wound on his right shoulder was taken so that he could land a heavy blow onto Fen Juechen. The entire process was so easy that it felt rather unnatural. When he thought about it calmly, when he had been dodging and defending, Fen Juechen's power, aura, and every single one of his dark attacks had all been peerless and terrifying. Yet the moment he had engaged Xianxia in hand-to-hand combat, his profound energy continuously grew weaker and more chaotic each time they clashed. The power of his dark attacks also continued to plunge as well. Even if his profound energy was not stable, it should not have become this wild in such a short period of time. So what exactly was going on? Be careful! Jasmine's cold voice rang out all of a sudden. There is no way that he would be defeated so easily. Even though the wounds he has suffered are considerably heavy, he still has a measure of strength left. Furthermore, it seems as if he is planning to release all of that strength in one shot. MN, I've noticed it as well, Xianxia said, his gaze growing more and more intense as he stared at the waters below. The heaven-smiting sword in his hand blazed with flames once more. Under the blue ocean, Xianxia could feel that Fen Juechen had stopped sinking. Even though he was seriously wounded, the aura on him was still expanding at a surprising speed. In the blink of an eye, he had actually surpassed the peak status of the profound strength he had before, and was continuing to increase in an extreme speed. At the same time, an extremely gloomy, suppressed aura spread through heaven and earth silently, as if a terrifying storm that could end the world was quietly brewing. Xianxia's eyebrows also tightened more and more. Of the two strikes that hit Fen Juechen before, the first strike smashed all of his breastbone, and the strength of the second strike destroyed his whole body. If it was someone else, that person would have died instantly. Even though Fen Juechen was seriously injured, it wasn't enough to kill him. However, when he was knocked into the ocean, his vitality and the aura of his profound energy became incredibly weak. But it was at this moment an unusual burst of power appeared. Could it be, under his unwillingness, he triggered some kind of forbidden power? As Xianxia was surprised by it, the ocean region below him suddenly became all pitch black. This severe change did not happen gradually. Instead, it happened in an instant. As far as the eyes could see, the huge blue ocean region had become black, a thick ink-like black. Before Xianxia could react, the world before his eyes also became pitch black all of a sudden, and he could not see any trace of light anymore. Hundreds of kilometers away, Fen Juechen brought Xianxia and flew to the edge of the ocean region. Just as their bodies passed the edge of the ocean coast, a pitch-black world appeared before them. "Ah!" Fen Juechen and Xianxia both exclaimed at the same time. This pitch-black world was a couple hundred kilometers away, but it was as if it was right before their eyes. The region that was covered by the dark night was like a black hole that was carved into the world. The things within it were all completely swallowed, disappeared, and turned into nothingness. A gloomy, irritating emotion shrouded Fen Juechen's mind and soul. She immediately became alert and used the phoenix's profound energy to protect her heart. At the same time, she transferred a large amount of energy to protect Xianxia. This pitch-black color overflowed with power, which possessed an aura more terrifying than anything Fen Juechen had ever seen. The unsettling feeling she felt increased more than 10 times. She held Xianxia tight with her arms and said hastily, "Let us hurry." Before her anxious voice faded, Fen Juechen's whole body burned in phoenix flames. Her flying speed increased suddenly as they rushed towards the pitch-black regions like a phoenix resurrected in fire. Xianxia's surroundings had become a field of darkness. Moreover, it wasn't just normal darkness due to the absence of light as within the darkness. Xianxia felt as if he had been fallen into a pitch-black swamp, as the air surrounding him became viscous and thick. Even simply moving a finger took many times more strength than normal. Countless oppressive, ghastly, ice-cold auras came from all directions and surged into his mind, eroding it. This kind of mind erosion was extremely terrifying. If these auras had entered the minds of others, they would already corroded those minds with negative emotions, and perhaps even driven those people crazy. However, due to the dragon god soul, Xianxia didn't need to fear these auras for now. This lightless eternal night, one of the high-level domains within the illusory devil tome of eternal night, Jasmine said in a serious tone. With Fen Juechen's current ability, he can barely activate it. He might even need to pay an enormous price. Lightless eternal night? Xianxia started to feel countless of spooky, bone-piercing aura gush crazily towards him. Slowly, he felt like he seemed to be swallowed into the stomach of a giant monster, and would be digested into nothingness anytime. Everything that is covered by this domain will be swallowed whole once they are covered by this domain. Not a single trace would be left, including light, Jasmine said in a low voice. Now that this domain has covered an entire 75 kilometers, even if you used all your strength, you would still unable to forcefully escape from it before it completely devours you. The only thing you can do right now is to forcefully tear it open. Even with his spiritual perception, Xianxia was completely unable to perceive the edges of this pitch-black domain, as if it were endless. As his surroundings became increasingly dark and viscous, the range of Xianxia's spiritual sense continued to decrease, and the amount of effort for each breath doubled. It reached a point where Xianxia began to feel a trace of despair from being trapped within this endless black hole. "Xianxia!" The sound of devilish voice wailing resonated over from the depths of the dark domain. It was none other than Fen Juechen, who had become completely twisted due to his immense hatred and enmity. "Disappear? Forever!" He could hear Fen Juechen's voice, but he wasn't able to detect where he was because this voice came from every corner of the dark domain. At this moment, Xianxia was almost suffocated and couldn't even breathe. The devouring energy shrouded his whole body and the whole world, and his protective profound energy was almost pushed to its defending limit. As the time of the terrifying crisis became increasingly near, Xianxia's face remained extremely stiff, but the glint in his eyes became increasingly frosty and serene. At this time, a trace of light suddenly appeared below the corner of his eye, a light which shouldn't have been able to appear within this dark domain. Xianxia's vision was quickly redirected as he focused below him. The light wasn't a hallucination or illusion. Although weak, it was real. Moreover, it appeared to contain a unique vermilion. Xianxia was incredibly familiar with this smear of vermilion. It was the color that belonged to the Heaven-Smiting Sword, As Xianxi's mind willed it, in the blink of an eye, his entire body's profound energy was condensed atop the Heaven-Smiting Sword. The next moment, the Heaven-Smiting Sword became enveloped in burning flames. Using the Heaven-Smiting Sword as a catalyst, golden crow flames began to blaze fiercely. An extremely intense glow of fire emerged amidst the darkness within this dark domain, which had devoured all light. The golden crow flames blazed atop the Heaven-Smiting Sword, illuminating its blade along with Xianxi's face and figure. It also completely dispersed the darkness around him within a diameter of 3 meters. Within this seemingly endless dark domain, he had easily burned out an area of light. After burning a hole in this area, a strange light flashed through Xianxi's eyes as they became focused, and he sliced out in front of him with his sword. Boom! A dull roar followed the trajectory of the Heaven-Smiting Sword's slice as the dark space in front of Xianxi was viciously torn apart. A several-meter-long trench of blinding, blazing flames began to burn amidst the darkness in front of him, only disappearing after quite a while. An extremely strong aura and a similarly terrifying momentum. However, it seems it's not that special after all. The pressure which had been weighing on his mind suddenly lessened by several times. The feeling perceived by Xianxi's body and spiritual sense earlier could be described as extremely terrifying. He had been unable to free himself from it, and was even more incapable of tearing it. At the time, he could even clearly feel the aura of death. He had never thought that this shockingly powerful dark domain would actually be so vulnerable against the golden crow flames. It might have seemed scary on the outside, but on the inside it was just a paper tiger which broke with the slightest touch. Jasmine. If so, Xianxi's hands gripped the Heaven-Smiting Sword, which was ablaze with flames. As the flames burned, 2 faint scarlet flames carrying traces of gold emerged within Xianxi's pupils. Behind him, the image of a giant golden crow slowly appeared, and then quickly came into being as a heat wave crazily spread through the surroundings. Golden crow flames destruction domain, Yellow Springs ashes. Boom, 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 the silhouette of the golden crow gave a long cry toward the sky, causing the air to tremble and the earth to crash. The flames, which originated from a primordial true god, were extremely hot and carried an unparalleled power of incineration as they forcefully tore through layer after layer of the dark domain. Even with the dark, profound energy as a medium, the darkness which had devoured all light suddenly combusted and became blindingly bright due to the extreme flames. Deep howls echoed around the dark domain like ghostly wails, as the darkness which hid the day madly attacked the golden crow flames in hopes of enveloping and devouring them. At first, the darkness was still barely able to contend with the golden crow flames to a standstill. However, as the more and more of the domain was torn and blown apart, the golden crow flames quickly became an unstoppable force as thousands of rips and hundreds of holes peered amidst the formerly complete world of darkness. Ah! In the face of the oncoming heat, Fen Juechen suddenly stopped as she let out a sound of shock. The originally cool ocean breeze became hot like a flame as several hundred meters of high waves began to madly roil and surge in the ocean below, forcing Fen Juechen to fly up to an altitude of 3,000 meters. As she looked forward, she saw that the giant area of darkness had undergone enormous change as streak after streak of flames pierced out the sides of the darkness. In the blink of an eye, the world of darkness had already become ragged. The darkness struggled as the flames devoured. Atop the roiling ocean, it was as if 2 giant beasts were fighting. A scarlet beast and a black beast were ruthlessly tearing at each other's throats. However, the darkness was clearly not an opponent for the scarlet flames which had later emerged. Before long, exposure to the burning scarlet flames caused the area of darkness to fall apart and turn into countless scattered fragments. Even without touching the incinerating flames, these fragments quickly dissipated on their own. As the flames continued to burn, they became increasingly intense. They had long since dyed the dark sky a thorough red, and had caused an extremely thick layer of steam which was hundreds of meters long to emerge atop the ocean and linger there. The gusting winds were now no longer suppressed, and became increasingly violent and hot. In order to protect Xianxia, Fen Juechen propped up a giant scarlet-red shield. Afterwards, they welcomed the violent gusts, and used it to increase their speed as they flew east. Big Brother Yun, please don't let anything happen to him. In the sky within an area of 5 kilometers, only the blazing golden crow flames remained as they continued to burn until the last trace of the darkness had been exterminated. Under Xianxia's Yellow Springs ashes, Fen Juechen's lightless eternal night had been completely defeated. It seemingly didn't even have the power to put up any resistance. The arm Xianxia had raised slowly fell as he withdrew the heaven-smiting sword into the sky-poisoned pearl. Once the heaven-smiting sword left his body, a heavy feeling of near collapse was felt through every inch of his body. Even though it could be said that the process of destroying Fen Juechen's dark domain went through without a hitch, it didn't mean that he could relax. The aftermath of releasing a Yellow Springs ashes which contained all his power left the profound energy in his body at a deficit. The reason why he had withdrawn the heaven-smiting sword was because he probably wouldn't even be able to lift the heaven-smiting sword for 10 breaths in his current condition. But at least his condition was by far better than Fen Juechen's. The flames that filled the sky began to fall with each ball of fire, leaving behind an expanse of water vapor which shot into the sky. If the power of the Golden Crow flames Xianxia released was increased by just a little bit, even water vapor would not arise, for it would instead burn the water into nothingness. Xianxia let out a slow exhale, then extended his hand. As his palm faced the boiling ocean's surface, he quickly released a streak of profound energy. Bang! The surface of the ocean exploded as a black human silhouette flew out in a straight line at Xianxia and was firmly sucked into Xianxia's grasp. Even though he had been soaked in ocean water for a long time, Fen Juechen's bloodstains still had not completely been washed off his body. There were at least tens of external injuries on his body that still slowly oozed with blood. The blood which stuck on his wounds and body was an abnormal scarlet-black color. Fen Juechen's life force and profound strength aura was already incomparably weak. Only the phrase, hanging on by a thread, could be used to describe his current appearance. All 4 of his limbs dangled as he was being grabbed by the back by Xianxia. Although he was no longer able to use even an iota of his strength, his consciousness had not collapsed yet. In a weak, hoarse, and painfully low voice, he uttered, "Why would it be like this? How could I possibly have lost? How could I lose?" Xianxia didn't say a single word. He lifted his left arm to Fen Juechen's head, and after a flash of radiance, his profound handle shot out of his arm, instantly entering Fen Juechen's forehead, attacking his mind and soul. He wanted to know where Fen Juechen's strange power came from. He also wanted to know what exactly was the illusory devil tome of eternal night Jasmine had mentioned. After a few breaths of time, Xianxia's complexion changed slightly. After a brief deadlock, the profound handle flew out of Fen Juechen's body, returning to Xianxia's arm. What a tenacious mind and willpower, Xianxia muttered in astonishment. He could actually still resist the profound handle soul search in that state. Not only has his profound strength explosively increased, his soul has also qualitatively changed. Adding on to his originally strong willpower, even if he's half dead, you wouldn't be able to succeed if you conduct a profound handle soul search. Jasmine stately indifferently, not surprised at all about this outcome. Xianxia swept his eyes across the surface of the ocean, dove down, and threw the near-dead Fen Juechen onto a broken reef. "You are not going to kill him," Jasmine said coldly. She didn't feel any killing intent on Xianxia, and his action now was obviously letting Fen Juechen go. The consequences of cutting the grass without digging up the roots are right before your eyes. Do you want to make the same mistake on the same person again? "I really want to kill him." Xianxia took a light breath as his face showed helplessness. A terrifying trouble was created all because he let Fen Juechen go back then. With Fen Juechen's almost heaven-defying growth speed, if he let him leave alive, it would be like planting a disaster that would be who knows how many times larger than today. But... Sigh, Xianxia shook his head and extended a hand towards Fen Juechen. He did not do it to deliver the final blow, but to release the energy of heaven and earth that he had stored up quite a while ago as he transferred it into Fen Juechen's body. Fen Juechen's wounds were immediately sealed as a faint energy circulated within his almost exhausted profound veins and meridians. Although weak, it was enough to allow Fen Juechen to move again, so much that he could fly out of the Eastern Ocean region. Fen Juechen's eyes widened as his eyes recovered their clarity. Using his arm to support his body, he lifted his upper body with difficulty. His eyes that were filled with shock, unwillingness, and resentment glared unwaveringly at Xianxia. "If you want to kill me, don't you dare humiliate me." "Humiliate you?" Xianxia's mouth curled in disdain. "I don't have such low-level interests, and I'm not going to kill you either." "You." Xianxia's words didn't make Fen Juechen happy in the slightest. He only felt deep humiliation. The reason why I didn't kill you 4 years ago was because you had once saved my little aunt Zio Lynxie. Also, in these 3 years that I left the profound sky continent, if it weren't for you, I might not have been able to see my little aunt again. Xianxia deeply stared at Fen Juechen's fierce face that was full of hatred. Frankly speaking, although your heart is filled with hatred and resentment toward me, I actually can't hate you. Instead, I feel a bit of gratitude. I don't need your insincerity. Me saving her has nothing to do with you. If you have the guts, kill me right now, or else there will come a day in which I'll make you wish that you were dead. Fen Juechen roared hoarsely, being spared and even offered gratitude by the person he hated the most. To him, this was a humiliation that he was simply unable to bear. Me releasing you today can be considered as repayment for saving my little aunt the second time. After that, I won't owe you anything, Xianxia stated coldly. If you want to kill me for revenge, then properly treasure the life that I spared a second time. The injuries on your body are severe and your vitality has taken a huge hit, but with your current cultivation, you ought to be able to fully recover in 2 months. In these 2 months, you better hide well, because if you die, you would have died in vain. As for the next time you come over to kill me, don't even dream of leaving alive like you can today. The atmosphere still burned hot, but the ocean waves had somewhat settled for the most part. Fen Juechen slowly stood up. Even though his body was incomparably weak, the expression in his eyes was as sinister as a savage wolf's. You will regret this. The reason why I was defeated by you today was only because I lost in terms of weaponry. Once I retrieve the Heavenly Sin Divine Sword, I will give the blood debt and humiliation to you back 1,000,000 times greater. Heavenly Sin Divine Sword. Xianxia's brows twitched due to Fen Juechen's words. Fen Juechen also quickly realized that his tongue had slipped due to him losing control. He tightened his fists, gritted his teeth, then flew into the air while enduring the sharp pains on his body. Flying haphazardly, he headed south. Seeing his blood-drenched back, Xianxia hesitated for a bit, but didn't give chase as he indifferently watched him go into the distance. Live on for at least a few more years. If you die, she will feel sad, Xianxia suddenly muttered. Fen Juechen, who was already more than 500 meters away, suddenly trembled slightly. Heavenly Sin Divine Sword, why would he want to obtain that sword? Xianxia withdrew his gaze, his brows slowly tightening. Heavenly Sin Divine Sword. That was the Devil Sword Conference's Devil Sword. Also, what Fen Juechen had said was not obtain or seize, but retrieve. If it wasn't an error on Fen Juechen's part, the meaning behind the word retrieve was too thought-provoking. On the other hand, Fen Juechen's final words faintly revealed that he seemed to know how to control the Heavenly Sin Divine Sword. As expected, him participating in the Devil Sword Conference was not without reason. It was actually to obtain the Heavenly Sin Divine Sword. And it seems that not only did he know of the Heavenly Sin Divine Sword's existence, he also seems to have a special relationship or purpose. What in the world is going on? Then why didn't you make him stay and question him? Jasmine asked unhappily. His bones are almost as stubborn as mine. If he doesn't want to say anything, even if you torment him to death, it would be impossible for him to reveal half a word. Forcibly making him stay would only be wasting my strength is all, Xianxia said helplessly. You also saw it before. I failed when I was trying to conduct the profound handle soul search. HMPH? Jasmine dully snorted and didn't deny it. Instead, she changed topics. I've told you this before, he had not even absorbed half the devil origin in his body at the moment. He was completely certain that he would be able to kill you today, yet still lost miserably, and was even spared. Due to this humiliation, he will definitely absorb the devil origin with more zest than ever. You have already experienced the speed of his growth within these short 3 months. If you don't kill him today, what you have buried away is not just a simple risk, but an absolute calamity that will most likely kill you soon. By that time, you wouldn't even have the time to regret it. I knew you would say that, and I know all that. Xianxia slowly continued. But he still saved my little aunt many times. I also understand little aunt too well. She looks strong and positive, but she's actually too good and kind-hearted. She feels grateful toward Fen Juechen, and had always seen herself as the cause of Burning Heaven Clan's annihilation and Fen Juechen's hatred toward me. If I really killed him, she would then place the sin of Fen Juechen's death upon herself as well. It would leave a knot in her heart that would perhaps never get untied in this lifetime. I would rather pick the choice of having a future misfortune on myself instead of that. Furthermore, just the fact of him having saved little aunt 2 times is enough for me to do this. While talking, Xianxia turned around and looked toward the east while quickly changing into a set of looser clothes. As he put them on, he specially covered the wounds on his shoulders. Big brother Yun, little Chi. Following a scorching heat wave that separated the water's surface, Feng Zuer quickly flew over while bringing along Xianxia. Little Chi, are you all right? Are you hurt? After stopping by Yun Chi's side, Xianxia hurriedly grasped his hands with force and frantically looked all over his body. Seeing that he was safe and sound, her heart that was hanging on a thread during the entire journey had finally rested. Of course I'm all right, not a hair less. Yun Chi answered in a comfortable, relaxed voice. Big brother Yun, I'm sorry. Feng Zuer lowered her delicate head and said timidly, I didn't listen to your instructions. I know that you guys risked coming over here because you were worried about me. Yun Chi said with a warm smile. He pulled over Feng Zuer's hand. I told you that nothing would happen to me. See, I didn't lie. Then, Fen Juechen, is he all ready? Xianxia softly questioned. On the way here, she and Feng Zuer had personally seen the horrifying scene of the exchange between the darkness and flames. In the end, it was the flames that had extinguished the darkness, which also meant that Yun Chi had defeated Fen Juechen. With the two being mortal enemies and the last scene that fierce Yun Chi winning also meant that Fen Juechen. As for Fen Juechen, Yun Chi gave a slight smile and pointed to the south. He's over there. Although his injuries were a bit ugly, flying out of the ocean region was no problem. But if he wants to fully recover, it might take 1 or 2 months. Severe injuries and a weak state caused Fen Juechen's flying speed to be really slow. Even a slightly strong gust of wind would be able to violently shake him. So even if he had left for quite a while, a pitch-black figure doing its best to leave could still be seen in the distance. However, it seemed like the indistinct black figure had suddenly sensed Xianxia's arrival, for it started to desperately accelerate. It swayed even more intensely, as though it wanted to escape at all costs, nearly falling right into the ocean several times. Xianxia relaxed her mind. Using both hands to hug Yun Chi's arm, her head gently leaned on him. Little Chi, thank you. Thank me? Why? Yun Chi asked with a smile. I know it was because of me that little Chi did not kill him. But this... Xianxia closed her eyes. Her heart felt warm, yet pained and anxious. She didn't want Fen Juechen to die because she knew that he wasn't a bad person. Furthermore, he was originally a really pitiful person, and was also her savior that she was extremely grateful toward. However, because of her, Yun Chi let him go, yet he would still desperately try to kill Yun Chi. She didn't know what in the world she should think, should do. Nor did she know how to dispel the hatred Fen Juechen felt for Yun Chi. After all, it was a hatred born from the annihilation of his clan. Ha ha ha! Yun Chi began laughing loudly, then said in a rather serious voice, even though Fen Juechen has always wanted to kill me, he has still saved Little Ant's life. And as for Little Ant's life, to me, it is infinitely more precious than my own. That is why me releasing him is just a matter of course. Moreover, he might feel grateful that I released him. Adding on the fact that he himself knows that he isn't my match, he might not come back again and look for trouble. Little Chi, Xianxia softly uttered as she tightened her hug on Yun Chi. Sensing that Xianxia's nervousness and worry scattered into thin air, Yun Chi also completely relaxed. Embracing Xianxia's slender waist in one hand and holding Feng Zuer's little hand in another, he said, Let's go back. Grandfather and the others are definitely worried about us. Yun Chi's profound energy surged as they headed back to Floating Cloud City. However, the speed with which he traveled was much slower than he used coming here by several times. The thoughts he had were much more complex than before as well. Illusory devil tome of eternal night, dark profound strength, heavenly sin divine sword, what exactly were the secrets Fen Juechen was hiding? The ocean surface incessantly lifted huge waves as Fen Juechen's flight speed decreased. With his hand on his chest completely damp with scarlet-black blood, Fen Juechen's face was full of pain. When a small isle appeared in his line of sight, Fen Juechen gritted his teeth and flew over staggeringly. His mind relaxed somewhat as his body fiercely fell onto the edge of the little isle. Using his hands to support himself, he flipped his body over with difficulty. His breathing came out in rough pants as he sunk all 10 of his fingers into the ice-cold sand with a gripping motion. Why is it like this? Cough, cough, cough. He coughed painfully, with each cough bringing along a patch of black blood and the occasional pieces of his internal organs. Heh, what a truly pitiful person. A heart-piercing, ice-cold voice suddenly came from up front. And judging from the voice, it seemed to the voice of a young girl. Fen Juechen abruptly raised his head, Not even 5 steps from where he was at, he saw a petite red figure. Like a ghost, a young girl soundlessly appeared there. Wearing a luxurious red dress, she looked to be only 12 or 13 years old and possessed an outrageously exquisite face. It was also this little girl who actually caused all the nerves on his body to convulse. Each and every cell on his body all trembled uncontrollably. He had never trembled like this before in his entire life, even in the time of his greatest despair. Who are you? The girl's eyes were beautiful to the point of being demonic. Under the gaze of these pair of eyes, he couldn't feel his body under his intense trembling. The girl didn't answer him, but an ice-cold, mocking smile appeared on her extremely beautiful face. At a great cost, you obtained a huge power and believed that you could easily kill your greatest foe. However, you didn't expect the other party's Devil Slayer sword to just happen to be your power's greatest bane. Your defeat truly makes one pity you. Who exactly are you? The girl's eyes were a field of cold indifference. She slowly raised her arm, and a red light deeper than fresh blood flashed in her palm that was more fair than the first snow. Him not killing you doesn't mean that I won't kill you. The power of the devil that had already been extinct since the ancient era actually appeared on your body. That also determined your end. As the girl's voice fell, the red light within her palm became an extremely thin red beam. Along with the instantaneous hissing of space, it shot straight at Fen Juechen. That beam of red light was even faster than lightning. Fen Juechen only saw that red gleam. He did not even have time to think about reacting before that red light struck him in the head, instantly burrowing its way into his body. Immediately, the feeling of being pierced by countless steel needles surged crazily out of his soul, causing him to let out a miserable wail before he lost consciousness and fainted dead away. The red-robed girl's eyes faintly drooped. Her gaze was cold and clear, and she maintained a certain posture as she swiftly read through Fen Juechen's memories. After a short 10 seconds, that beam of red light left Fen Juechen's body and disappeared into the sky. His memories had also been completely read by the red-robed girl. She had not overlooked anything. At the same time, she conveniently wiped away all the memories he had after meeting her. The red-robed girl slowly withdrew her palm as a strange light briefly flashed in her eyes. She turned around, not looking at the unconscious Fen Juechen again, but she did not make a move against him either. A small, snowy white hand made a small gesture, and an extremely long spatial tear appeared in front of the girl immediately. It twisted and keened in the air, neither dissipating nor disappearing. You are similarly a person with 2 lives, yet the fate of both your lives are so unspeakably tragic. It is pitiful to the point where even I don't want to kill you anymore. With a cold and detached sigh, the girl stepped into the spatial tier and disappeared completely as the space sealed itself around her. Once he returned to floating Cloud City, Xianxia swiftly retreated to his own courtyard, then began to focus on recovering his profound energy and healing his injuries. The fight with Fen Juechen was far less bitter and desperate than he had originally envisioned. To think that he was actually able to completely dominate a Fen Juechen who still had 40% of his strength left. Even when he thought about it now, he still felt that it was rather implausible. Jasmine, I just can't shake the feeling that there was something off with Fen Juechen's condition. Could it be that a characteristic of devil profound energy is that once you have used up most of it, the remaining portion becomes extremely weak? Xianxia waited for a good long while, but he did not hear Jasmine's reply. Was she asleep? No, that can't be the case. The devilish poison in her body has already been purged, so she shouldn't need to descend into a deep sleep where she sealed off all of her senses. After hesitating for a while, Xianxia decided to enter his subconscious mind and entered the Sky Poison Pearl. Within the world of the Sky Poison Pearl, he could only see Hunger sound asleep. She had not reacted to his arrival, yet he did not see Jasmine's figure nor did he sense her presence. Xianxia stood there silently, sunk in thought. He did not leave the Sky Poison Pearl, he merely stood there, waiting for Jasmine to return. Even though Jasmine did not need to rely on the Sky Poison Pearl any longer, she still shared a life with him. Her spirit body could not leave Xianxia's side for too long, so she would be back before long. And just as expected, after Xianxia waited for a little while longer, a red light flashed in front of him, and Jasmine's charming features appeared before him, her small, milk-white face completely expressionless. You were waiting for me? Could you actually have gone to look for Fen Juechen? Xianxia said with a doubt-filled expression. HMPH, you guessed right. Jasmine's face turned to the side as the petals of her lips involuntarily puckered into a pout, as if she was very upset that he had actually been able to guess what she just did. However, you don't need to worry. I didn't kill him, I only obtained some knowledge that I desired from him, that's all. Which means that you have already gleaned all of his secrets? Xianxia asked in astonishment. HMPH, you could say so. Xianxia's mind jolted and he immediately asked, then where exactly did his power come from? What exactly happened to him over the last few years? Why does he want to obtain the heavenly sin divine sword? Jasmine's, you could say so, definitely meant that she basically understood the crux of the entire matter and all the necessary details as well. The various mysteries surrounding Fen Juechen had always been in the back of his mind. So since Jasmine already knew the answers to these questions, he definitely had to get to the bottom of the whole affair. It looks like the whole matter regarding Fen Juechen has really gotten to you, Jasmine said sedately. I'm just intensely curious, that's all. Xianxia said as he furrowed his eyebrows. In just 4 short years, his strength shot up to such a degree that it's basically inconceivable. The profound energy he uses is something I have never seen before, and the fact that he mentioned the heavenly sin divine sword today raises up even more questions. I just have a feeling that there is a huge mystery hidden behind Fen Juechen, and I can't help but think about it. It is far from being just some great riddle, Jasmine said as her long and delicate eyebrows faintly sank. The things recorded in his memories are far more interesting than I had initially expected them to be. Even though Jasmine labeled it as interesting, her expression had clearly become rather solemn. This undoubtedly caused Xianxia's already great curiosity to grow even more as his suspicions became even heavier. Before, when Jasmine had yelled out the words, illusory devil tome of eternal night, her tone had been rather irregular. And right now, it seemed like the complexity of the situation far exceeded the boundaries of what he had initially imagined. Could it be something that I am once again not allowed to know about? Xianxia asked cautiously. Jasmine had hidden many things from him, and if she did not feel like telling him, there was no way that he could even finagle a single word from her. Jasmine gave him a glance before haughtily turning her head aside once more. Even though this matter is rather troublesome to talk about, since you're so anxious to know about it. HMPH, today I finally got rid of the devilish poison and I'm feeling pretty good, so I'll just tell you anyways. Whatever I'm about to say to you right now, you must never leak a single word of it to anyone in the future, no matter who you meet. Damn me, it was this serious. Xianxia thought as he solemnly replied, there is probably nobody in this world who knows me better than you, and whether or not I am a person who has no sense of what is important or not is something that you should know better than anyone. HMPH. When it comes to women, you have never once ever showed that you had your priorities set straight. Jasmine coldly snorted. Xianxia was left utterly speechless. Jasmine extended an arm, and with a flourish of her small hand, she set up a small sound obstruction barrier around Hunger. This sound obstruction barrier was definitely not to prevent her from eavesdropping. On the contrary, it was to prevent their conversation from waking her up. This casual gesture merely illustrated the practically involuntary care and love that Jasmine had for Hunger. Jasmine had always been protective and caring towards Hunger, but she is forever so fierce towards me, Xianxia thought rather sourly. During the primordial era, the divine era specifically, the other races were all deemed to be inferior and lowly existences. The north of the primal chaos dimension was composed of yin energy, while the south was composed of yang energy. The southern region of the primal chaos dimension was the realm where the ancient god clan existed, whereas the northern region of the primal chaos dimension was where the ancient devil clan lived. The god clan and the devil clan each controlled half of the primal chaos dimension. The yin and yang energies of both clans repelled each other, and both clans viewed the other with animosity, but actual conflict rarely occurred. It could even be said that they rarely came into contact with each other, and a tenuous peace existed between the two clans. It was just like two conflicting elements which existed mutually as they balanced each other out. Jasmine began to recite her tale, but the contents of her story caused Xianxia to become completely dazed as a question involuntarily escaped his lips. All of this, what does it have to do with Fen Juechen? Do not interrupt, Jasmine said with a loud scoff. All of these naturally have something to do with Fen Juechen. Xianxia. The reason that the gods and the devils were so strong was because they were birthed from the power produced at the very beginning of the primal chaos. Furthermore, they were also nurtured by the energy that was produced at the beginning of the primal chaos. And the purest, strongest, and most perfect energy of heaven and earth that was produced at the beginning of the primal chaos is the primordial energy that I mentioned when I was teaching you the great way of the Buddha. Even though the energy that you absorb into your body using the great way of the Buddha is also the energy of heaven and earth, when you compare its quality to that of the quality of the primordial energy, it is inferior by heaven knows how many levels. It is akin to the difference between heaven and earth. Xianxia naturally remembered the term primordial energy. At that time, Jasmine had said this. If one could cultivate the great way of the Buddha until one reached the 10th stage, that person could use the ultimate energy of heaven and earth, primordial energy. But she had also said that for the body of a human, even being able to cultivate the 6th stage of the great way of the Buddha was already the extreme limit. It was basically impossible for any more true gods to appear after the divine era. And the most fundamental reason behind that was that the primordial energy within the primal chaos dimension had become so thin that it was no longer possible to nurture any more people with the bodies and strength of a true god. Furthermore, as the primal chaos realm grew more and more turbid, this caused the primordial energy to become thinner as each year goes by. Thus, we are destined to never have a true God appear from among us ever again. And right now, it is possible that the initial ultimate and purest primordial energy that existed in the beginning might not even exist in the primal chaos dimension anymore. During that ancient era, the gods were at the pinnacle of all existence. And among the small worlds that exist across countless stars and worlds, a portion of them were naturally created by the primal chaos, but the majority of them were created or transformed by the gods. More than 90% of the races in existence today were all created by the power of the gods. And that includes the human race, the demon race, the elven race, the dark nether race, the wood spirit race. Dark nether race, wood spirit race. What sort of races are these? Xianxia blurted out involuntarily. He had never ever heard of the name of these two races before, whether it was in the profound sky continent or the illusory demon realm, and there were no written records regarding them either. Jasmine rolled her eyes at him, seeming angry that she was interrupted once more. But this time she only gave a soft snort as she held her temper and continued to speak. The wood spirit race is the same as the elven race. They are a clan which possesses an extreme intimacy with nature energy. They can communicate with plants, and they have a certain degree of control over plants. The innate talent this clan has for cultivating profound energy is extremely low, therefore they are always weak and downtrodden. Furthermore, given their unique powers and physique, if they fall into the hands of those from outside their race, their fates will always be exceptionally miserable. They will be enslaved and treated as tools that could look for and nurture medicine. Or even worse, their bodies might even be used to refine spirit medicines or medicine spirits. In the auction houses of my world, it was very common to see wood spirits being sold. And because there were less and less of this race of people, and they began to teeter on the edge of extinction, their prices began to get higher and higher. Xianxia, the dark nether race is a race that subsists on darkness and has the ability to change their form at will. Their race doesn't have any distinction between the genders, and they can reproduce asexually. This size of this race isn't small, but they can only exist in places where yin energy abounds. The profound strength they can cultivate by themselves is extremely low. However, they have the ability to harvest the souls of living creatures, and they can devour these souls to greatly increase their strength. They subsist on darkness. Xianxia's eyes widened. He could understand if one subsisted on vegetation, morning dew, or even wind, but to subsist on darkness, what the hell was this race? Could something like darkness even be eaten? HMPH. Ignorant fool, Jasmine said in a very disdainful manner. Given your experiences, you may perhaps only know of the existence of humans, demons, and beasts. But in this gigantic primal chaos dimension, there exists hundreds of small and large races, and the knowledge that you possess is not even equivalent to a single drop in the ocean. There not only exist races which subsist on darkness, there are even races that subsist on dreams and even space. It is rumored that during the primordial era, there was even a race that subsisted on time itself. At number percent, Xianxia's brain was about to crash, but he still could not imagine what it would be like to be able to eat dreams, space, or even time. Forget it. You have never even left this tiny blue pole star before. So these are things that you will probably never understand in your lifetime. and telling you these kind of things is equivalent to wasting my breath." Jasmine folded her tender arms across her chest as she assumed a haughty posture which seemed to look down on everything else. Moreover, the divine era ultimately met a most complete and thorough demise. And the reason for this demise was something that I mentioned to you a long time ago. It was because of one sword. Heaven-punishing ancestral sword? Xianxia whispered in a hoarse voice. The heaven-punishing ancestral sword existed since the primordial times. It was produced from the foundation and core power of the primal chaos realm. It was also the primal chaos realm's first sword. It is the ancestor of every single sword and even every single weapon in the world. Ranked first in the 7 heavenly profound treasures, it contains heaven-defying strength. The legends say that even a powerless man wielding it will be able to easily cut through the blue firmament and destroy the heavens. Jasmine duly described of this sword of legends, and even in the world she was born, the heaven-punishing ancestral sword was also a legendary existence. During the era of gods, no one had not heard of the name heaven-punishing ancestral sword. However, as the divine essence of its first owner, who was also its only owner in records, the head of the 3 creation gods, Mo-E, dissipated entirely and their lifespan ended, the heaven-punishing ancestral sword also disappeared without a trace. No one had ever seen traces of it ever again, until 700,000 years later. In the center of the primal chaos, the silhouette of the heaven-punishing ancestral sword appeared once again. Xianxia. Jasmine closed her eyes, as if immersing herself within distant memories, and continued narrating unhurriedly. Because it existed in the middle of the primal chaos, the heaven-punishing ancestral sword was discovered by the god and devil races at the same time, and they inevitably wanted it for themselves. This was because by obtaining the heaven-punishing ancestral sword, they would possess supreme power within the entire primal chaos. It was something that none of the gods could resist. Thus, in order to obtain the heaven-punishing ancestral sword, the southern region of the primal chaos world of the gods and the northern region of the primal chaos world of the devils waged a fierce war. At first, both sides were simply fighting in order to obtain the heaven-punishing ancestral sword. As the war became fiercer, as increasing numbers of gods perished at the hands of the devils, and increasing numbers of devils were buried by the gods, hatred started to breed, spread, and intensify, causing the war between the gods and devils to become more bitter, causing even more gods and devils to perish, and causing the animosity to further deepen. Xianxia was entranced, however. One sentence roared in his heart tens of times. What did this have to do with the matter of Fen Juechen? The fierce battle between the 2 races lasted for 30,000 years, with the devil race starting to collapse. Even their northern area of the primal chaos was slowly being occupied by the gods. The remnants of the devil race were slowly forced to the corners of the primal chaos. In despair, the devil race started a counterattack without a care for the consequences. They sacrificed the taboo device that even they were incomparably terrified of. The evil embryo eternal tribulation wheel. Jasmine's eyebrows trembled for a split second whilst mentioning the name, as if that memory was extremely terrifying, an existence which made even the true gods tremble. Evil embryo eternal tribulation wheel. Xianxia was slightly shocked. Then he remembered. The second ranking of the 7 great heavenly profound treasures. The evil embryo eternal tribulation wheel, which is second only to the heaven-punishing ancestral sword. That's right. Jasmine closed her eyes once again. Although its ranking within the 7 heavenly profound treasures is second after the heaven-punishing ancestral sword, the extent of its terror far exceeds the heaven-punishing ancestral sword. Even just based on its slaughtering and destructive capabilities, it could probably even surpass the heaven-punishing ancestral sword. The heaven-punishing ancestral sword was birthed from the purest and most sacred force of the primal chaos. It is the strongest and most sacred sword. The evil embryo eternal tribulation wheel, on the other hand, is the most extreme opposite. It was born from the darkest and most evil forces of the primal chaos, containing the most extreme, the most terrifying negative energy. Once that energy is activated, even gods will not be able to control it, not to mention anyone else. Thus, even though the evil embryo eternal tribulation wheel had always existed in the northern primal chaos, the devil race had always sealed and isolated it with their utmost might, not to mention using its strength. They did not even dare to go near it, even when they had to continuously retreat during their war with the god race. They had never thought of using the strength of the evil embryo eternal tribulation wheel. However, the god race utterly defeated the devil race and gradually occupied more and more of the northern primal chaos, with the intention of eradicating the devil race. In desperation and grief, the devil race utilized the evil embryo eternal tribulation wheel in a frenzy. Jasmine's brows could not help but tighten. There was even a hint of pain in her voice. It seemed as if the memory was too horrifying. When the power of the evil embryo eternal tribulation wheel was activated, a wail as if from an infant, yet sinister and terrifying to the extreme, spread to every corner of the primal chaos. An aura of death and a shadow enveloped every inch of space. If it were the god race of the Golden Age, perhaps they could have banded together to resist the power of the evil embryo eternal tribulation wheel. However, although the god race was victorious, 30,000 years of bitter war had made them pay an extremely disastrous price. The golden age of the gods had withered to a point which words could not describe. They simply did not have the power to resist the destructive strength of the evil embryo eternal tribulation wheel. All the gods were either destroyed, severely injured, or were inflicted with evil energy, their divine essence quickly draining. They were better off dead. It was not only the god race which experienced such a disaster. Even the devil race who activated the evil embryo eternal tribulation wheel had experienced it too. That miserable disaster exceeds your imagination by countless times. Those which were cut down like straws were not simply petty creatures, but true gods, supreme existences which could easily rule the heavens. In order to survive, the remnant god and devil race could not help but to unite in order to resist the power of the evil embryo eternal tribulation wheel. However, it was already too late. Both races were forced to the verge of extinction. The power of the evil embryo eternal tribulation wheel had also neared its end. Just when both races thought they could see the light at the end of the tunnel, the evil embryo eternal tribulation wheel released an extremely toxic poison across the skies, leading the god and devil races into an abyss of despair. Poison? Xianxia subconsciously whispered. That kind of poison was called Terminator of Life. Although you are well versed in the arts of poison, you could never have heard of this kind of poison. Jasmine said apathetically. It is even scarier than the heaven-wounding thought-severing poison that the sky poison pearl can release. It is terrifying to the point that a true god can die by simply touching it. Xianxia's heart trembled, then he suddenly felt puzzled. Heaven-wounding thought-severing poison? What was that? How do I not know about it? When he initially used the poisonous strength of the sky poison pearl, although the poison which was released was indeed scary, it was not to a level beyond reason. After using all of the poisonous strength, it was only enough to poison 33 cities and 76 sects. Could it be that when I had obtained the sky poison pearl, the poisonous strength had been depleted already? Jasmine's eyes swept across Xianxia and noted his reaction, but developed a different notion. She turned her head and said, "You do not need to feel shocked. Although the sky poison pearl has the words sky poison in its name, poisonous strength is not its main ability. Its main ability is to purify and refine. In fact, it has the most powerful purifying and refining ability in the word. However, even if it is the sky poison pearl's purifying abilities, whether it can purify the evil embryo eternal tribulation wheels, Terminator of Life, is unknown. The absolute god-slaying poison that I was inflicted with, and the devilish poison which Hunger was inflicted with, both originated from the evil essence of the evil embryo eternal tribulation wheel when the ancient devil race used it. If it is able to produce a god-slaying poison with simply its remnant aura, even true gods would not be able to comprehend how terrifying the Terminator of Life is, which was produced with the original power of the evil embryo eternal tribulation wheel. At least to me, even the sky poison pearl would not be able to purify the Terminator of Life. If not, the god race would not have been entirely wiped out. What happened after that? Were the god and devil races both destroyed just like this? Xianxia asked in detail. That's right. Jasmine nodded her head indifferently. The destruction of the era of gods began with the first-ranking sky profound treasure, the heaven-punishing ancestral sword, and ended with the second-ranking evil embryo eternal tribulation wheel. Back then, when I entrusted you with the evil god's indestructible blood, I had told you that the evil god was the last god to perish during the era of gods. Then the gods and devils perished. The primal chaos was a mess. Countless stars and planets and living creatures perished. And the aura of the evil embryo eternal tribulation wheel finally dispersed. Although the evil god had not died, the terminator of life in his body meant that he could not escape death. During the last moments of his life, he used his last bits of divine power to slow down the chaos within the primal chaos to his best ability. Then, with his last bits of divine essence, he chose the lands he wanted to perish in and finally died. Regarding the part about the evil god, I had obtained pieces of memories when I initially obtained the evil god's indestructible blood. The evil god must have deliberately done that while leaving behind his legacy. However, within these memories are many blanks. Obviously, the evil god must have deliberately hidden some things that he did not want later generations to know about. Even the lands where he chose to perish and what he did in the last moments of his life have been meticulously erased. From the memories obtained from the evil god's indestructible blood, that would mean that under the heavens, whatever Jasmine had just said, she was the only one privy to such knowledge. But, what did all of these have to do with the matter of Fen Juechen? I only wanted to know what bizarre things had happened with Fen Juechen's body. Why did such ancient matters suddenly come up? Although it was rather interesting to listen. Although that was the end of the era of gods and was a catastrophe which affected the entire primal chaos, it was too distant and vast for Xianxia. Moreover, it did not have anything to do with his present, past, or future. He would only find it interesting, and maybe feel a little mind blown. Basically, there was no difference to hearing a made-up myth. On the contrary, he was much more interested in Fen Juechen's secret. And then, where did the heaven-punishing ancestral sword and evil embryo eternal tribulation wheel go? Xianxia asked. Jasmine slowly shook her head. Not a clue. The evil god was the last of the fallen gods, so it's likely that he knew the final location of the heaven-punishing ancestral sword and evil embryo eternal tribulation wheel. Yet this was not mentioned in the fragments of the memories he left behind. Perhaps he hid them in the final moments of his life in order to prevent these items, the sources of the annihilation of the gods, from throwing the world into chaos and disaster once more. He may have hid them in a place where future generations would never be able to find them. But the primordial azure dragon said that his daughter was sealed within the heaven-punishing ancestral sword, so what's going on? He wanted me to find the heaven-punishing ancestral sword by any means. Xianxia frowned as he thought back to the words the dragon god said to him at the wasteland of death. It could have even been considered a request. As if I would know. Jasmine pursed her lips slightly. Whether it's the memories I inherited or records of the primordial god clan, the heaven-punishing ancestral sword has hardly ever been mentioned. As for your search for it, HMPH, from what I see, it's completely ridiculous. It hasn't been that long since the annihilation of the gods, probably only about 1,000,000 years. During these 1,000,000 years, countless creatures and races have persistently searched for the heaven-punishing ancestral sword. Even if the gods have been annihilated, the heaven-punishing ancestral sword cannot disappear. Nothing in this world is capable of destroying it. Yet in these 1,000,000 years, no one has ever seen its shadow, much less any trace of it. To this day, there are still numerous people searching for the heaven-punishing ancestral sword. Not a single person who knows of the name, heaven-punishing ancestral sword, doesn't want to possess it. As for the matter regarding the sealed dragon god's daughter, I haven't heard of such news before. Who knows, we could be the only two in the world to know of this, even though it's useless information. Then, how about the evil embryo eternal tribulation wheel? Xianxia asked. While that evil demonic weapon also cannot be destroyed by anything in this world, no one will attempt to search for it. HMPH, putting aside the potential waste of effort searching for it, even if it were to appear right in front of someone, it would be avoided out of fear. To possess and use it, one would first have to be eternally damned to hell. Jasmine's voice was frosty, as if she had been influenced by the remnants of a memory, causing her to strongly reject and fear the evil embryo eternal tribulation wheel. After the annihilation of the gods, the evil embryo eternal tribulation wheel was also thoroughly hidden and has not appeared for 1,000,000 years. It was definitely hidden somewhere during the chaos. With 1,000,000 years of time, the energy used to annihilate gods that went dormant must have awakened once again. Then how about the primordial seal of life and death that was ranked third? Was it also lost for 1,000,000 years? Xianxia asked impatiently. The primordial seal of life and death, it was the only hope he knew of that could save the little demon empress. Of course, Jasmine replied without hesitation. Based on the scattered records of the primordial seal of life and death, It originally belonged to one of the three creation gods, a female god named Li Xiu. She carried the primordial seal of life and death with her, and was thus granted immortality barring any accidents. She would not have died or grown old, but in the terrible battle between gods and devils, she perished after being surrounded by a number of devils. The primordial seal of life and death fell into the hands of the devil race. In the end, since the devil race wielded the evil embryo eternal tribulation wheel, the god race never managed to seize back the primordial seal of life and death. Therefore, the primordial seal of life and death was lost in the chaos following the eradication of the devil race. In these million years, the number of people who dream of possessing the primordial seal of life and death are certainly no less than those who desire the heaven-punishing ancestral sword. The heaven-punishing ancestral sword can grant the user an unparalleled strength, but the primordial seal of life and death can grant immortality as long as the holder isn't killed. If a person were to possess both, Jasmine narrowed her eyes, they would truly be the master of immortality and chaos. Yet, as I've said, it's possible that the primordial seal of life and death has already been found. After all, one only needs to carry it on their body to activate its power of immortality. Hiding it out of sight would be simple, and the person who possesses it would do everything in his power to ensure that no one else knows of its existence, not even his own relatives. Xianxia pondered for some time before exhaling sharply, almost grinded his teeth, and asked, all these things that you've told me, how exactly are they related to Fen Juechen? Of course they're related. Jasmine threw him a glance, her expression becoming somber. The profound art he uses is the illusory devil tome of eternal night, which is obviously one of the primordial devil race's devil arts. Primordial devil race? Xianxia's heart lurched. Hasn't the primordial devil race already gone extinct? That's the reason why I was shocked when Fen Juechen released his power source in response to your provocation, Jasmine said, frowning. Xianxia frowned and tentatively asked, could it be that he obtained an inheritance from the primordial devil race? If the gods were able to leave their souls and their blood behind as a legacy, then shouldn't devils be able to do the same as existences on the same level as gods? No, Jasmine shook her head. Although devils and gods have the same divine level of strength, their souls and sources of power are different. In fact, they are diametrically opposed. Before the gods disappeared into extinction, they were furious that they would simply disappear. So they merged their power and souls together to form a spirit. This spirit guarded the last of their blood and will, bestowing their blood and power to others as a means for their existence to endure the primal chaos realm. The spirit and the divine blood left behind are extraordinarily powerful, to the extent that they cannot be naturally eliminated. They have an affinity with this world, and therefore receive the world's protection. Yet devils are completely different. Devils possess a type of power contrary to the unsullied power of the world. Most devils fear the light. Even if devils left spirits or demonic blood behind, the power of the world would reject it, and it would quickly dissipate. It probably wouldn't last a couple thousand of years, let alone a million. When the era of gods ended, most of the legacies that the gods left behind were found, birthing a new realm of the gods. As for the legacies of the devils, they indeed appeared after the extinction of gods and devils, but each legacy lasted less than 10 generations before the power of the world purified it. In a mere 30,000 years, the legacies of the devils disappeared and were never seen again in the following million years. Xianxia. And now, after vanishing for a million years, the power of the primordial devil race, which even the realm of the gods has almost forgotten, has appeared in such a lowly human. It's extremely strange. Jasmine's frown deepened. Her understanding of gods, devils, the ancient races, and their powers far surpassed Xianxia's. The shock that Fen Juechen's dark, profound energy caused in Jasmine was something that Xianxia could not understand. Since the primordial devil race's strength vanished such a long time ago, why were you able to recognize it? Xianxia asked thoughtfully. Jasmine replied with a straight face. When I inherited this power, I also inherited fragments of the primordial spirit's memory. These memories coincidentally recall dark, profound energy. Or rather, it should be called a dark devil art that Fen Juechen possesses, which allowed me to recognize it. This type of devil art is called Illusory Devil Tome of Eternal Night, and belonged to a high-level devil clan which was called the Eternal Night Devil Clan in the ancient era of gods. To use such a devil art, one must have the corresponding devil blood or devil spirit, similar to your World Ode of the Phoenix, where you require phoenix blood to activate certain abilities. This means that Fen Juechen, who has the illusory devil tome of Eternal Night, also inherited the Eternal Night Devil clan's devil blood or devil spirit. Devil blood or devil spirit that hasn't dissipated in 1,000,000 years. This, Xianxia felt stranger as the conversation went on, even thinking that this just was not something he could comprehend at his level. Fen Juechen's earth-shattering change in just a few years surely had an unusual reason, but it was certainly unexpected for it to be so extraordinary. He could feel a headache coming on just listening to Jasmine's description. Xianxia considered Jasmine's reaction and spoke while thinking, "You managed to read Fen Juechen's memories, so you should know how he got his power, right?" "I do already know, and it's more interesting than any other method I can think of." Jasmine's face grew cold. "His devil art and power comes from his father." "His father?" Xianxia stared at her with wide eyes and said with a face full of disbelief, "That can't be. I killed his father, Fen Juechen, with my own 2 hands. He can't be still alive. Even if he were, Fen Juechen's profound strength is only at the sky profound realm. No matter how." "I didn't say his father was Fen Juechen." Jasmine's expression appeared thoughtful. Xianxia's expression instantly became strange as he said in a lowly, "Then, Fen Juechen is not Fen Juechen's son? Fen Juechen was cuckolded. Fen Juechen is indeed Fen Juechen's biological father, but Fen Juechen has another father, who is also his biological father." Xianxia. At number percent, dumbfounded face, 2 men can also have children. Xianxia's voice became tinny and he audibly gulped. Jasmine used a hard glare reserved for idiots to stare down at Xianxia. "Of course not, it's just Fen Juechen is the same as you, a person with 2 lifetimes. WH at? Xianxia's heart jumped. "But there's a difference." Jasmine quickly added, "You had 2 lives in the profound sky continent and the azure cloud continent." Jasmine paused slightly before she corrected herself. "No, it should be 3 lives because you triggered the Mirror of Samsara's reincarnation powers, and twice at that. While the Mirror of Samsara's reincarnation power is in effect, it will simultaneously alter. You could say it alters cause and effect. Yet this ability that goes against the gods doesn't disrupt the laws of cause and effect. In addition, the Mirror of Samsara has many formidable aspects, which is something that even the heavens cannot interfere with. As for Fen Juechen, I had my suspicions when I was sensing his strength and soul at the beginning, but it was just a feeling, and I dismissed it soon after. I thought his devil art was derived from his adverse emotions affecting his strength, giving rise to an ordinary devil profound strength. When I read his memories just now, I realized that that flash of speculation I had was the truth. There is the effect of a type of forbidden reincarnation technique on him." "Forbidden reincarnation technique. What is that?" Xianxia asked curiously. It was his first time hearing those 4 words. "Since it is a forbidden art, it cannot be tolerated by this world and is fated to be condemned. It even messes with reincarnation." Jasmine laughed coldly. Within that sound, there was a flash of pity towards Fen Juechen. "But the forbidden reincarnation technique on Fen Juechen's body is of a higher level than what I'm familiar with. Although it has been 1,000 years, the spirit is still at least 70% whole. This must be because it is the forbidden arts of the ancient devil clan, or more accurately, of the illusory devil tome of Eternal Night." Xianxia felt increasingly dazed as Jasmine went on. If he were told directly that Fen Juechen inherited the legacy of a certain primordial devil, it might have been easier for him to process. Although it is about 70% intact, it is still an incomplete soul. This causes Fen Juechen to have a temperament different from others. He will be more eccentric, sensitive, prone to extremes, and will easily lose his temper and self-control. At Xianxia's perplexed expression, Jasmine raised an eyebrow. She knew that her explanation was on a level far above what Xianxia was capable of understanding. She had to put it in simpler terms. "Forget it. I'll just tell you straight up. Fen Juechen's previous name was Yi Huang. His father in his former life was called Yi Mufeng, and his mother was Yi Jiangxi." "Yi Huang, Yi. Doesn't this surname solely belong to the Sun Moon Divine Hall? Could it be?" "No," Jasmine interrupted Xianxia and stated mildly. "This is currently so, but 1,000 years ago there was another power surnamed Yi. That clan was essentially different from the Sun Moon Divine Hall." "Wait." Xianxia was struck by a sudden thought. Somewhere in the depths of his soul, there was a sense of familiarity towards the names Yi Mufeng and Yi Jiangxi. He quickly calmed his heart and followed the pulsing within his soul. He searched through the ancestral memories within the legacy of the frozen cloud celestial soul. Not a moment later, his understanding of the two names, Yi Mu Feng and Yi Jiangxi, became crystal clear in his mind, and he whispered in surprise, "Eternal Night Royal Family," other than the four great sacred grounds, the most detailed and extensive records for the Eternal Night Royal Family that was decimated 1,000 years ago would belong to the frozen cloud Asgard. Within the ancestral memories of the frozen cloud celestial soul, the last Eternal Night King of the Eternal Night Royal Family was called Yi Mu Feng, and the last Eternal Night Queen, the benefactor of frozen cloud Asgard's Mu Bingyun, was called Yi Jiangxi. "That's right," Jasmine spoke in a low murmur. "Yi Mu Feng was the last king of the Eternal Night family whom the four great sacred grounds jointly annihilated. Yi Jiangxi was then the Eternal Night Queen. Yi Huang was their only son, who was also the Eternal Night Royal family's last prince, and the Eternal Night Illusory God Record, which is the core profound art of the Eternal Night Royal family, actually is the primordial Eternal Night Devil Clan's illusory Devil Tome of Eternal Night. Even the name Eternal Night Royal Family was derived from the Eternal Night Devil Clan." There was such a thing? Yun Qi's mind was now a blank sea. If it wasn't for Jasmine personally explaining it, even if he retained the knowledge from two lives, he would have never linked Fen Juechen, who was clearly the son of Burning Heaven Clan's leader, with the Eternal Night Royal Family decimated 1,000 years ago. What's more, he would never have expected that a mere 20-year-old person would actually be an Eternal Night Prince from 1,000 years ago. Then, what exactly is the forbidden reincarnation technique? Could it be that Fen Juechen's soul is Yi Huang's from 1,000 years ago? If you knew all these through reading Fen Juechen's mind, does it mean he has regained his memories from his previous life? What's the deal with the Eternal Night Royal Family's profound art? Yun Qi's head was bursting with countless questions, and each obscure question was like a great mystery of the world, something he could not think through and understand. Jasmine didn't answer any of his questions up front, but went on by herself. 1,000 years ago, the Eternal Night Royal Family was jointly annihilated by the four great sacred grounds. The Eternal Night Prince, Yi Huang, was brutally killed. To save her son, the Eternal Night Queen, Yi Jiangxi disobeyed the ancestors' strict orders and employed the illusory Devil Tome of Eternal Night's forbidden technique. She forcefully confined Yi Huang's vanishing soul and blood essence, and used 20% of Yi Mu Feng's soul as a sacrifice to activate the forbidden reincarnation technique that violated the laws of heaven. Doing so, Yi Huang's soul and blood essence would never dissipate, and under special circumstances could reincarnate in another person's body. It was evident that the Eternal Night King and Queen already foresaw the Eternal Night Royal Family and used such a method to preserve their bloodline. Otherwise, they would never go against their ancestors' orders to use a forbidden technique condemned by the heavens. Yun Qi. Jasmine knew that the different dimensions of souls was something the current Yun Qi would never truly grasp. She said bluntly, "Simply put, Yi Huang died 1,000 years ago, both his body and soul. With the help of 20% of Yi Mu Feng's soul, Yi Jiangxi activated the Devil Clan's forbidden technique and used his soul to forcefully revive Yi Huang's soul. She then initiated the forbidden reincarnation technique, preventing Yi Huang's revived soul and blood essence from dissipating within a short period of time. If it comes across an infant who died within 6 hours of birth, Yi Huang's soul and bloodline could be preserved and reincarnated into that body. That means the real Fen Juechen died shortly after he was born. The current Fen Juechen, who is Fen Duanhun's third son, has a mixed bloodline from the Burning Heaven Clan and the Eternal Night Royal Family. But he has Yi Huang's soul, which was wandering around for 1,000 years. Yun Qi stated dazedly, "What the hell, this is even more complicated than me reincarnating twice. In this universe, there really is every kind of monster and demon." "That's right. But the soul isn't just solely Yi Huang's soul, but a fusion of Yi Huang and Yi Mu Feng, with the former as the main. Under the protection of the forbidden reincarnation technique, only 30% of the soul has dissipated within 1,000 years of wandering." Jasmine explained. Although the process and forbidden technique were things that Yun Qi knew nothing of and could not comprehend, he did at least understand the result. He muttered to himself, then slowly said, "Then, Fen Juechen's sudden change is because after he was reincarnated into this body, the bloodline and soul which had been dormant for 20 years were awakened. The bloodline has always existed in him, so you can't say it has been awakened. even if it's the Eternal Night Devil clan's forbidden reincarnation technique. The bloodline in the body used for reincarnation will not be able to sustain its previous strength. As for the soul, based on Yi Huang's incomplete soul, I recall it would take 30 years to awaken if there are no other factors in play. But something happened. With half-lidded eyes, Jasmine continued, 4 years ago, once you left after you annihilated the Burning Heaven clan, Fen Yiju used his last breath to entrust a pitch-black key to Fen Juechen, whom you spared. A pitch-black key. What's that? Xianxia asked doubtfully. When Fen Yiju handed over the key to Fen Juechen, he said that this was a forbidden item passed down by their ancestors. In it lies a terrifying forbidden secret, and was only to be used when the Burning Heaven clan faced impending annihilation. But it seems like even he did not know what the secret was. Fen Juechen acted according to the inscriptions carved by profound energy on the key, and traveled to Black Fiend Nation's land of enormity, where no sun nor moon has shone over in 10,000 years. He used that key and opened a soul-sealing coffin sealed a 1,000-year-old soul. In that soul-sealing coffin, what was sealed was Yi Mufeng's remaining soul. Ha! Xianxia was once again stunned. This bullshit. The biggest and most incredulous joke he had heard in his life couldn't even compare to this. Xianxia's memories reverted to the first day he had officially joined the frozen cloud Asgard as a disciple. While reminiscing, he said slowly, "At that time, Grand Mistress Feng Qianhui spoke to me about the Eternal Night royal family from 1,000 years ago, and briefly mentioned the Eternal Night King's final state. She said that the Eternal Night King's wife and son met a tragic death, and his entire clan was annihilated. Through extreme hatred and sorrow, he was suddenly devilized. He became the first person in the whole of the profound sky to have been truly devilized. After his transformation, the Eternal Night King abnormally grew stronger, but he still could not defend against the four great sacred grounds alliance, and was eventually killed by them. Although his body was destroyed, his soul lingered for a long time, as if his devilized profound energy caused his soul to undergo a fundamental change. And so, the four great sacred grounds could only seal the Eternal Night King's soul in a soul-sealing coffin. Feng Qianhui also said, the Eternal Night King's soul should have dissipated over 1,000 years of time. What Fen Juechen found was that soul-sealing coffin. For those who can't remember, please refer to chapter 381. If it wasn't for the soul-sealing coffin, the Eternal Night King, Yi Mufeng's soul would definitely have dissipated. The irony here is that the soul-sealing coffin sealed Yi Mufeng's soul, but at the same time, it also protected it. What's even more ironic is that the soul-sealing coffin was hidden in profound sky continent's Black Fiend Nation, where the densest yin energy is present. The aura there not only prolonged the dissipation of Yi Mufeng's soul, but it also helped to stave off the dissipation to a certain degree. With all this, it allowed Yi Mufeng's soul to retain about 40% of his soul while lasting over 1,000 years. Xianxia frowned, pondering. Fen Juechen borrowed a body and reincarnated into the Burning Heaven clan. The key to the soul-sealing coffin happened to be with the Burning Heaven clan instead of any of the four great sacred grounds. Even if these were coincidences, wouldn't they have been too serendipitous? The soul-sealing coffin sealed, but at the same time also protected. The land with the densest yin energy within the country with the densest yin energy, preventing the Eternal Night King's devil soul, which should have dissipated over 1,000 years from doing so finally. It was Fen Juechen who held the key and opened the soul-sealing coffin. All these coincidences coalesced and seemed more like a well-devised plan instead. But annihilating the Burning Heaven clan was done by my own hand, and me heeding Little Ant's request to spare Fen Juechen led to Fen Juechen obtaining the key to the soul-sealing coffin. Then this shouldn't have been a well-devised plan. Could it be that coincidences to such a degree actually exist in the world? Or could it be that the heavens pitied the Eternal Night royal family's tragic fate? While he was mumbling, another thought struck him, and he frowned. The Eternal Night illusory god record is the illusory devil tome of Eternal Night, but it should be an extinct primordial devil art. If so, that means that 1,000 years ago, Eternal Night King Yi Mufeng's devilization was not the devilization everyone knew of. But that's right. Jasmine nodded and spoke affirmatively. What he released from his body was the bound devil blood that had been always in him. Xianxia. Once the seal on the devil bloodline was unshackled, Yi Mufeng's innate profound strength and the illusory devil tome of Eternal Night's power proliferated. surpassing any one of the leaders of the sacred grounds. However, releasing the devil blood should be something only the royal bloodline of the Eternal Night royal family can do. Or else the Eternal Night royal family would never have been annihilated so easily. Also, judging the condition of Yi Mufeng's soul, once the seal on the devil blood is unshackled, it will cause a permanent drastic change in one's temperament and will. Also, there is no way to reseal the devil blood, but these are just my conjectures. The portion of memories on this part is sadly lacking. Fen Juechen's soul fused with Yi Mufeng's, and naturally their memories were also fused. Thus, when Jasmine attempted to read Fen Juechen's memories, she read both Fen Juechen's and Yi Mufeng's memories at the same time. But because Yi Mufeng's soul was slowly dissipating over 1,000 years, his remaining memories were also scattered and incomplete. Author's note, isn't Fen Juechen's matter a bit complicated? In fact, young group of translators, the time to put you guys to the test has come. I'll issue. 3. The surrounding towns of the core lands of the Eternal Night royal family were suddenly enveloped in a black fog overnight. Everyone within the towns, whether they were almighty profound practitioners or powerless women or children, were violently killed. Soon enough, all blame landed on the Eternal Night royal family because when the Eternal Night royal family's core profound art, the Eternal Night illusory God record, was invoked, a black fog would envelope the user's body. The bodies of those who died under the Eternal Night illusory God record were blackened and enveloped in a black fog that persisted for more than a few days. After that, mighty Heavenly Sword region was the first to question them. They named the Eternal Night royal family as a sinful devil clan, massacring innocents in order to enhance their devilish strength. In the name of protecting the profound sky continent and to get rid of evils, they then joined forces with the other 3 sacred grounds to annihilate the Eternal Night royal family. This was what Feng Qianhui had told him regarding the Eternal Night royal family back then, that mighty Heavenly Sword region had implicated the Eternal Night royal family. The name Illusory Devil Tome of Eternal Night could be altered, but the attribute of darkness could never be changed. Thus the profound aura of the Eternal Night royal family would always be black, using underhanded means. Mighty Heavenly Sword region framed the Eternal Night royal family as an evil devil clan. However, mighty Heavenly Sword region would never have dreamed that the Eternal Night royal family, who bore the devil's soul and blood, and cultivated the illusory devil tome of Eternal Night, could indeed be labeled as a devil clan. In fact, they were a primordial devil clan. Jasmine, you mentioned that the reason why Fen Juechen's power had increased explosively was because he had merged with a devil soul. Could that devil soul be the remnant soul of Yi Mufeng, who was sealed in the soul-sealing coffin? Regarding the issue which Jasmine had yet to bring up, Yun Qi had gradually formed an outline of the situation in his heart. Back then, after the soul-sealing coffin had been opened by Fen Juechen, Yi Mufeng's remnant soul had wanted to seize Fen Juechen's body, because at that point in time, Fen Juechen's body carried an extremely dense resentment. It could be said that his negative feelings were at its peak. It was simply a body bestowed by the heavens. However, Fen Juechen's willpower was too strong. He was countered when attempting to devour Fen Juechen's soul. At the same time, he discovered that Fen Juechen was actually Yi Huang who had reincarnated and thus gave up struggling. This allowed Fen Juechen to counter-devour his soul, and also using his remaining willpower and all his might. He transferred the origin power which was sealed within the remnant soul into Fen Juechen's body, allowing him to slowly absorb and assimilate it. Is this type of absorption a property exclusively belonging to the Eternal Night Devil clan, or the illusory Devil Tome of Eternal Night? Yun Qi asked right after. This was because Jasmine had clearly said that the direct transference of profound strength and legacies were extremely difficult tasks. With Fen Juechen's assimilation of devil origin, it became a direct transfer or inheritance of profound energy. In just a short few years, he leapt from the spirit profound realm to the sovereign profound realm. It was a mythical jump of 5 profound realms. Of course not. If that were so, then the devil race would not have been crushed by the god race during the primordial era. This was possible and realized because the forbidden reincarnation technique created an exceptional and strange coincidence. Jasmine said blandly. She was initially shocked and could not comprehend Fen Juechen's ability to directly absorb the concealed devil origin in his body, but she was now speaking in a calm and deadpan manner, an attestation that the truth of the matter did not deviate too far from her scope of knowledge. Coincidence? As I've said, 1,000 years ago, in order to secure Yi Huang's soul, the Eternal Night Royal family activated the forbidden reincarnation technique, where Yi Mufeng separated a fifth of his soul and fused it into Yi Huang's soul. Fen Juechen's soul is in essence Yi Huang, and Yi Mufeng's souls melded, with Yi Huang as the dominant party. Although this vestige of Yi Mufeng's soul and the soul in the coffin he integrated originate from the same person, there is an inherently distinct difference. The latter is a subsequently devoured soul similar to prey, but the former is his original soul. Since these two parts of essentially different souls trace back to Yi Mufeng, they were able to assimilate with Yi Mufeng's devil origin perfectly, and allow Fen Juechen's soul to coexist with Yi Mufeng's devil origin to a certain degree of harmony. In addition, the devil origin is completely malleable, allowing Fen Juechen to directly absorb the power melded within the devil origin and utilize it as his own power. It's just that this kind of harmony covers only a small portion after all. So even though Fen Juechen is able to directly absorb the devil origin, the speed of absorption will be sluggish. It's been several years, but he has only managed to absorb less than half. And during the process of absorption, the pain will be unfathomable, especially in the initial stages. Due to the existence of some incompatibility, while he bears this power, his body and soul will endure a pain similar to constant ripping and shredding. That kind of pain is something that no normal person can bear. Xianxia remained silent. This should be the aforementioned hell by Fen Juechen. At the same time, the external energy that cannot fully meld will also reduce his lifespan. If he ceases the absorption and maintains this current state, he can live for another 3 years at most. If he persists in absorbing devil origin, his remaining lifespan will shorten further. Jasmine sneered. HMPH, how could the transfer and inheritance of power be that simple? If it were anyone else faced with such a price, even if it was for the sake of a power 10 times stronger, they would still absolutely refuse. Only Fen Juechen, with such a dark life history, would choose this hopeless road. Which is why, even though both of you experienced 2 lives, you were blessed by the mirror of samsara, enjoying impossibly good luck that could incur the wrath of heaven. But Fen Juechen, he could even be named as the most pitiful existence in the whole profound sky continent. Bearing a shattered life, a shattered soul, saddled with the grievances of 2 clans over 2 eras, and enduring a living hell of pain with every breath. He paid such a price in exchange for power, yet he was thwarted by you, and shown mercy by you, HMPH. The consequent unjustness, humiliation, and resentment would be ingrained in him more deeply than you can imagine. The thought of casually killing him did cross my mind, but because he was pitiful to such an extent, I thought to spare his life. He won't have much time left anyway, and with me around, he won't be able to kill you. Jasmine's tone shifted slightly, and continued, seemingly more meaningfully. Even without me, he still won't be able to kill you. Let him keep his wretched life to kill whoever else he wants to. After all, you are one of the last few amongst those he wants dead, contrary to expectations. The others he wants dead, could they be from the 4 great sacred grounds? Xianxia asked. Of course. Ultimately, it was the 4 great sacred grounds who annihilated the innocent Eternal Night royal family, and were the perpetrators of his tragedy. His sole motive for staying alive till today is revenge. With the word, revenge, Xianxia couldn't help but recall his last 7 years in the Azure Cloud continent. The sole motive for staying alive till today was revenge. Weren't these the words ringing in his soul almost every day, every night, inundating his every breath and moment? Perhaps in this world, the person who could truly understand the present Fen Juechen's completely twisted belief would be Xianxia. But the difference was, during that time other than revenge, he had lingered just that. When revenge eclipses all else and becomes your sole belief, any other advice, any other impediments will become virtually useless. However, with the little remaining life that he has, no matter how fast his speed of growth, he could never reach a level where he poses a threat to the sacred grounds, much less take any revenge. Xianxia paused, as if suddenly recalling something. He frowned deeply and said, 1,000 years ago, Yi Mufeng's strength alone was not enough to overpower any of the sacred grounds masters. But after he released his devil blood, all 4 sacred grounds masters had to join hands to defeat him. Fen Juechen is a direct descendant of the royal bloodline, so is it possible? Of course it's possible, Jasmine replied assertively. Although 30% of the inherited blood was lost due to the forbidden reincarnation technique, there's still about 70% that was retained. Also, Fen Juechen already knows the method to release the confined devil blood inside him. And that is the Heavenly Sin Divine Sword. It's no wonder why he is participating in the Devil's Sword Conference and wants possession of the Heavenly Sin Divine Sword. Xianxia murmured. It's for the sake of releasing the confined devil blood. Since the key to releasing the devil blood lies in the Heavenly Sin Divine Sword, then, would he have the ability to control the Heavenly Sin Divine Sword? He won't be able to. Jasmine shook her head. During that time, Yi Mufeng surpassed Fen Juechen, whether it was his profound strength or the density of his devil blood. Even after the devil blood was released, he was still unable to control the Heavenly Sin Divine Sword. Come to think of it, Jasmine considered Xianxia, aren't you curious why the Heavenly Sin Divine Sword is able to release the Eternal Night Royal family's devil blood? I'm guessing the Eternal Night Royal family's devil blood originated from the Heavenly Sin Divine Sword, Xianxia asked cautiously. HMPH, you've guessed it. Unknowingly, Jasmine had strolled over to the sound obstruction barrier made for Honger. Watching the blissfully sleeping Honger, a gleam of tenderness flashed across Jasmine's icy gaze. According to Yi Mufeng's memories, 10,000 years ago, the ancestors who established the Eternal Night Royal family unexpectedly found the Heavenly Sin Divine Sword in a deserted place, south of the continent. When the Eternal Night ancestor picked the sword up, he couldn't sense the mighty aura of a sword, but a strange aura of darkness. Just when he was about to abandon the sword, he inadvertently brushed against a drop of black liquid on the hilt. Within that moment of contact, the drop of black liquid instantly absorbed into his body. Devil, blood, Xianxia exclaimed. Though the power of the bloodline contained within was weak, it was still on a different and much higher level. And once the devil blood entered his body, the nature of his profound strength changed rapidly. Even his soul was affected, which caused his temperament to change greatly as well. However, it was fortunate that the Eternal Night ancestor possessed great profound strength. Although his temperament became violent and explosive, it didn't tamper with his character so much as to land him in a state where he became a bloodthirsty creature. Essentially, he fully retained his logic and reasoning, clearly aware that these changes originated from the devil blood. And so, after he established the Eternal Night Royal family, he decreed that all his newborn, direct descendants had to seal at least 90% of the devil bloodline, seizing the opportunity while the inherited bloodline was weak. Unless they faced a catastrophe, they were absolutely forbidden from releasing the seal. For a whole 10,000 years, everyone obeyed. The Heavenly Sin Divine Sword became the entire clan's sacred yet forbidden item, and they protected and looked over it for generations. For every generation, with the exception of the Eternal Night King, no one was allowed to come close or lay a finger on it, much less allow it to fall into another's hands. The appellation Heavenly Sin Divine Sword was given by the Eternal Night Ancestor, meaning those who carelessly lay a finger on it will have sinned and invoked heaven's divine wrath. Then, what about the illusory devil tome of Eternal Night? Where did it come from? Xianxia asked. Similarly from the Heavenly Sin Divine Sword. Jasmine knitted her eyebrows slightly. The illusory devil tome of Eternal Night was obtained from the sword by the same Eternal Night ancestor, just by removing the word devil. The name was then changed to the Eternal Night Illusory God Record. It wasn't mentioned within the inherited memories of the Eternal Night Royal family how it was retrieved, clearly denying the knowledge to any descendants. Relying on this diluted devil blood and the illusory devil tome of Eternal Night, the Eternal Night Royal family achieved the greatest strength, at the highest level on the profound sky continent within a short period of time. The devil blood, the illusory devil tome of Eternal Night, both originated from the Heavenly Sin Divine Sword. But where did that sword come from? Why would it have the blood and art of the devil clan which were eliminated 1,000,000 years ago? Xianxia asked solemnly. This, he feared, could be the crux of the whole issue. Jasmine's tiny face was equally solemn. This is also the point I'm most concerned about. Before the Eternal Night Ancestor obtained it, the profound sky continent had absolutely not an iota of record on the Heavenly Sin Divine Sword. It was as if the sword appeared from thin air. The Eternal Night Royal family does not know of its origins, nor does anyone else. However, we should be getting our answers soon. 2 months later, head to Supreme Ocean Palace and attend the Devil Sword Conference while you're investigating the Moon Slaughter Devil Nest. I'd like to see exactly what secret that Heavenly Sin Divine Sword has. I can only hope that whatever is inside hasn't dissipated during these 10,000 years. Jasmine's voice had dipped. For the devil blood and art to have reappeared after 1,000,000 years, even if it occurred in the realm of the gods, it would still be an earth-shattering event. However, her expression was still calm, because on the profound sky continent, even if she were to exhibit a small portion of her power, there was nothing that was not within her control. "I've got it." Xianxia nodded and inhaled a little, on one hand digesting the information that Jasmine loaded him with today, and on the other sinking further into his rumination. "What are you thinking about? Did it suddenly occur to you that what you've witnessed in your past 2 lives have been completely insignificant?" Jasmine slightly tilted her exquisite, doll-like face up, speaking in a patronizing tone and attitude. "I'm thinking about Fen Juechen's situation." Xianxia lifted his head, staring into the white expanse of the sky poison pearl. "He is indeed, as you described him to be, beyond pitiful and lamentable. His most pitiful aspect would be, he thought he had nothing, no relatives, only vengeance, yet fate arranged for him to stumble upon his former father's soul. However, this father of his gave him not familial warmth to rely on as he lived his life, but turned him into a vessel for vengeance. You could even call him a tool. The remnants of Yi Mufeng's soul recognized that Fen Juechen was Yi Huang. He should therefore be clear that this transference of his own memories and devil origin to Fen Juechen will cause the latter to gain immense power, but at the same time, to inherit and bear an unfathomable agony. Even his lifespan would be suddenly cut to just a few years, essentially turning him into a marionette whose sole purpose was revenge. During that time, they ignored the consequences, disobeyed their ancestors' instructions, and activated the forbidden reincarnation technique on Yi Huang. This was in order to allow him to live on, continuing the bloodline of the eternal Night Royal family. But 1,000 years later, Yi Mufeng's remnant soul personally destroyed all of this, completely destroying all the effort put into preserving their son's life. This was absolutely not something a father would do. Should the current Fen Juechen be successful in his quest for vengeance, I fear he may no longer have any further attachments to the mortal world. Xianxia murmured, rather emotionally. Just as the words left his mouth, the silhouette of Xiao Lingxi wavered across his vision, perhaps. There was still. Jasmine was naturally clear on Xianxia's hint, and she sneered. The 1,000-year devil blood released by Yi Mufeng caused his soul to subsequently change its nature, and his temperament naturally followed suit to change greatly. This remnant soul bore 1,000 years of suffering. At that time, his willpower, his vengeance, both were exponentially greater than his son's. This is the devil that warps a human's nature. The devil is indeed a fearsome thing. Fen Juechen, that guy? Xianxia sighed in frustration. I still really wish he could live a couple of years longer. Little Ant's heart is softer than cotton. She will surely be deluged in sorrow for a long time. Also, his heart holds the most hatred for mighty Heavenly Sword region. It seems like he and I both have a common enemy. And there's also that Sun-Moon Divine Hall. After staying in Floating Cloud City for 3 days, Xianxia had fully recuperated from his injury and replenished his profound strength. On the 4th morning, Xianxia and Feng Zuer bade farewell to Xiao Lingxi and the others, riding the primordial profound arc toward Blue Wind Imperial City. They planned on stopping at Blue Wind Imperial City for 2 days before making their way to Frozen Cloud Asgard. Number 1 Under Heaven had chosen to stay in Floating Cloud City to focus on the safety of Number 7 Under Heaven, worried that a mishap might befall her. The primordial profound arc traveled through space and arrived at Blue Wind Imperial City instantaneously. A duration of 3 months was not enough for the Blue Wind Imperial family to completely restore peace from the chaos of war, but it made a world of a difference regarding atmosphere. After discovering that Xianxia had a mysterious master behind him, which even Sun-Moon Divine Hall was afraid of, Feng Hengkang's gestures were not simply to compensate them, but also to express goodwill. Within the span of 2 months, not only had he proactively sent additional Divine Phoenix soldiers to assist Blue Wind Empire, he also delivered 40,000 kilograms of purple crystals to them in 3 shipments. Compared to the 50 kilograms of purple vein divine crystal they had stolen from the Blue Wind Empire, this 80,000 caddy of purple crystals was but a paltry sum. However, it was still a considerable sum of wealth and resources. At the same time, it served as a sign of their goodwill toward the Blue Wind Empire in the eyes of others. Additionally, a rumor that the Divine Phoenix Nation left behind their Snow Princess in the Blue Wind Empire caused the rest of the 5 nations of the profound sky to become ill at ease. Every nation sent envoys and even monarchs to frequently visits with presents. Their attitude became humble, as if they were facing the divine Phoenix nation. When Xianxia and Feng Zuo arrived at Blue Wind Imperial City, Kang Yue was reading through the status of reconstruction and resettlement of the various areas within Blue Wind. With Xianxia back, everything else would naturally take a backseat. Husband, you returned at just the right time. I something important to tell you. Although she said it was something important, Kang Yue's beautiful eyes held a hint of amusement. The somewhat secret plan where the divine Phoenix nation wanted to let younger sister Zuer marry you has somehow spread like wildfire. Even the rest of the 5 nations are aware of it. Yesterday, the Navy Tide sent their envoy to propose a marriage between their Princess Hanyu and yourself, thereby securing an alliance of marriage like that of Qin and Jin with our Blue Wind Empire. Qin? Jin? What? Ah! Feng Zuer cried softly and stared at Yue Qi with her beautiful, glistening eyes. Mn, Yue, judging by your appearance, don't tell me that you agree. Yue Qi touches his nose. Kang Yue said with a smile, Princess Hanyu is not an ordinary princess. She is the youngest daughter of the Navy Tide monarch. She is less than 20 years old this year, but is already well known. There was a rumor circulating that not only was she extremely beautiful, but she is also the most intelligent daughter of the Navy Tide monarch. She is the most beloved daughter of Navy Tide's monarch by far, and was named the Frost Navy Princess of Jade. They have taken the initiative this time to make the proposal on the marriage, so it shows their sincerity. They brought a portrait of Princess Hanyu. I took a glance and felt that you might like her, so I did not decline. Kang Yue and everyone else were well aware that part of the reason why the 5 nations of Profound Sky changed their attitude toward Blue Wind was because of the divine Phoenix Empire, while the main reason was Yue Qi, a man who had caused even the divine Phoenix nation to have no choice but to give in. Although he was merely the prince consort of Blue Wind during the reign of Kang Wan, he had henceforth undoubtedly become the ruling monarch in the eyes of other nations. As she spoke, Kang Yue placed an exquisite portrait scroll in front of Xianxia, her eyes brimming with joy and contentment. She did not reject Navy Tide and had even kept the portrait. This was not meant to tease Xianxia. She thought he might genuinely like her. As long as he showed the tiniest bit of fondness, she would accept the arrangement. As for the ties between the 2 nations, they were secondary. Oh, it's good to be powerful. Even beautiful princesses are knocking at the door, Xianxia thought to himself. He took the scroll but did not unroll it. Instead, he asked with a serious expression, Yue, is this Princess Hanyu as pretty as Zuer? Kang Yue was startled for a moment, but then shook her head with a smile. Zuer is like the embodiment of a heavenly fairy. Her beauty can put the sun and moon to shame. Princess Hanyu is undoubtedly a ravishing beauty, but she is nowhere near comparable to little sister Zuer. Oh, Xianxia nodded and then put the scroll down. In that case, forget it. I would not be interested in a girl I have not even met before, much less marry her, unless she were as pretty as Zuer. Feng Zuer laughed. Big brother Yun, you are flattering me again. Kang Yue retrieved the scroll and said with a smile, the envoy of Navy Tide is still in the city. If my husband does not like it, then I really will reject them, you know. Reject them firmly and with any kind of reason. Xianxia said with a helpless expression. A man married to any woman from a family with even the slightest bit of power would face countless objections to taking a concubine. With her status as Blue Wind Nation's monarch, Kang Yue was instead pampering him to the heavens. Xianxia suddenly noticed that, among the jade scrolls placed next to Kang Yue's hand, there was a green male eagle imprinted on the topmost jade scroll. This imprint was obviously the unique heavenly eagle imprint that belonged to the Xiao sect. Have the people from Xiao sect been here recently? Xianxia asked in a casual manner. It was not surprising for them to have visited. Mn, Kang Yue nodded gently. Since 2 months ago, Xiao sect has been constantly seeking an audience. Each time, it was the Xiao sect master, Xianxia Juechen, who came personally. Since I still feel some resentment toward them, I have never agreed to meet with them. A few days ago, they attempted to send these jade scrolls, pledging their loyalty to our royal family and placing their services at our disposal. During the 3 years of invasion by Divine Phoenix, the Xiao sect did not put up any resistance. The fact that they stooped to groveling could be written off and ignored, but they also provided resources to support the Divine Phoenix Army as tribute. This greatly bolstered the Divine Phoenix Army's ability to conquer Blue Wind. with a complete reversal in circumstances. They would naturally be terrified and restless, desperately rushing to grand gestures of apology and expressing their loyalty. Zio sect, Xianxia sneered, but his smile immediately vanished as he thought of something. What about Heavenly Sword Villa? Did they show up during this period? At the mention of Heavenly Sword Villa, Kang Yue's radiant smile slightly subsided. She shook her head gently. No. Back then, when my royal father was killed and Blue Wind was in a perilous situation, Heavenly Sword Villa's indifference angered me. They also said that they're breaking off all ties and swear that we would be enemies henceforth. Now that the Blue Wind Empire has managed to endure this adversity and rebuild, Heavenly Sword Villa is acting as if nothing happened before, as if they do not exist. Kang Yue's expression and tone were calm, as if she were apparently taking things quite lightly. Yet, from her disappearing smile, it was clear that she was unable to get over this matter. She had personally written to them 9 times. She was an empress, yet she had to resort to pleading for their help to avoid any retaliation. Heavenly Sword Villa betrayed her and rejected her pleas. She could have accepted the first few rejections, but her 9 pleas yielded 9 counts of apathy. Without even a shadow of a reply, it was as if the Blue Wind imperial family did not exist. That was a kind of resentment and humiliation that would never be forgotten. 3 months ago, when the Divine Phoenix Army retreated and gave various forms of apologies and compensation to Blue Wind, striving to express their goodwill, Heavenly Sword Villa did not visit the imperial family a single time. HMPH. That's right, they don't have the face to show up. Xianxia laughed coldly, his laughter carrying an underlying gloominess that Kang Yue and Feng Zuer did not understand. It's fine if they don't come. I have wanted to pay them a visit anyway. Let's make it today, then. Blue Wind Nation, Heavenly Sword Villa. The atmosphere of Heavenly Sword Villa was especially solemn and rigid because the villa had received distinguished guests with terrifyingly high statuses. The arrival of these 2 people caused the auras of the swords surrounding Heavenly Sword Villa to undergo tremendous changes. For 2 elders to personally make a trip to our villa, I, Yuefeng, am extremely perplexed. If I had known of the 2 elders' arrival earlier, Yuefeng would have summoned the whole villa to welcome you from 100 miles away. Ling Yuefeng's respectful posture belied his fear. He personally served tea to his 2 distinguished guests. It was a 100-year-old collection known as the Sword Green Tea, a tea so precious that he would usually be unwilling to drink it. It is a pleasant surprise that both uncles are here. You should have notified Yuefeng in advance so that I could welcome you along with my husband. Compared to Ling Yuefeng, Xuanyuan Yufeng was more at ease. Although the 2 distinguished guests present were indeed her uncles in terms of seniority, both of them had showered her with tender, loving care when she was young. The 2 people appeared to be past their 50s, but their hair and beards were still black. The man on the left wore a green gown, had a medium build, and wore a cheerful expression. The one on the right wore a gray gown, was slightly taller than the other, and had a thick beard that reached his chest. He similarly had a warm expression, if one were to look purely at their appearance. They were both simply 2 gentle, middle-aged men, but to sword expert Ling Yuefeng, he could sense gusts of cold from them. Even though they were just sitting there, their profound energy suppressed. A formless sword energy shrouded them. The sword energy was majestic, as if were a boundless, immeasurably deep ocean. Their eyebrows were shaped, pointing upwards as if 2 sharp swords were stabbing into the sky, and instilled fear in others. Ho ho, the elder dressed in green said with a mild smile. The 2 of us were instructed by the Sword Master to make a trip to the Black Fiend Nation, and before we departed, 9th Elder made a request. Once we settled matters in Black Fiend Nation, we made a detour here. Xuanyuan Yufeng stepped forward and said, "This must be an important task since the Sword Master himself gave these instructions, and it was personally attended to by both elders. With such an important matter on hand, both elders still made a detour to visit us. We are certainly honored." The elder dressed in gray stroked his long beard and said with a mild smile, "Not at all. We are obliged to fulfill 9th Elder's request. Yuefeng can be considered a part of our sword region, and Yufeng is all the more so. Both of you should ease up on the formality. Ho 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 ho. For my father-in-law to have requested both elders to come personally, should he have any instructions, Yuefeng will be happy to fulfill them." Ling Yuefeng said respectfully, if it was 3 years ago. He would not have dared to say father-in-law, but he was now used to it. "It's nothing that important," the elder in green said with a dull smile. 9th Elder likes Ling Jai very much. ever since he left the Sword region to return here. Ninth Elder has missed him daily, even though it has been less than half a year. He instructed us to bring Ling Jai on our way back once we settled issues in Black Fiend Nation. If neither of you have anything important to attend to, it would be best to return with us. The Elder in Gray continued. Ninth Elder rarely smiles, but he is always overjoyed when he reunites with all of you. Ling Yuefeng and Xunyuan Yufeng smiled at each other, their faces revealing joy. Xunyuan Yufeng and her father Xunyuan Ju had originally severed their ties, but Xunyuan Yufeng was the only daughter of Xunyuan Ju after all. After some time, the anger subsided. Although he missed his daughter, it was difficult for him to admit it because of his pride. 3 years ago, when both husband and wife brought Ling Yun and Ling Jai back to the Sword region, the strained relationship began to soften furthermore. Xunyuan Ju liked Ling Jai so much that not only had he personally guided him in swordplay, but he also spent a generous amount of the Sword region's resources on him. This helped Ling Jai's profound strength and sword art to improve tremendously in the past few years. The main reason for Xunyuan Ju's relationship with the husband and wife softening so much over the past 3 years could be attributed to Ling Jai. Xunyuan Yufeng smiled and was just about to accept when, suddenly a deep, thunderous voice boomed from outside. Xunyuan Yufeng, come on out, over the Ranbo. This is a stupid fourth wall break joke because of the proverb Chinese letter, Chinese letter, Chinese letter, Chinese letter, which refers to an alliance sealed by marriage between Qin and Jin dynasty in the real world's Chinese history. Obviously, Yun Qi had never heard of such dynasties because they do not exist in the ATG world, so he's reacting to it. This stretch of mountain was conferred on Heavenly Sword Villa by the Blue Wind royal family 1,000 years ago. Since then, it has been renamed as the Heavenly Sword Mountain Range. The summit of the tallest mountain is known as the summit of Cloud-Piercing Sword, and it is also the highest peak in Blue Wind Nation. From a bird's eye view, Yun Qi introduced the area in detail to Feng Zuer. When he first arrived at Heavenly Sword Villa years ago, he was awed by the Heavenly Sword Mountain Range with its surging sword aura. Coupled with the Heavenly Sword Mountain Range's reputation, a reverence was naturally born in his heart. This time, however, when he faced Heavenly Sword Villa once again, he felt mildly scornful. This feeling of scorn definitely did not emerge from him being strong and looking down on the weak. It was contempt birthed from his heart for all of Heavenly Sword Villa. When he first arrived at Heavenly Sword Villa 6 years ago, it never crossed his mind that Heavenly Sword Villa of Blue Wind, in all its tremendous overshadowing power and magnificence, would land in such a sorry plight when faced with Blue Wind Nation's difficulty and Frozen Cloud's crisis. Big Brother Yun, I'd like to know, how do you plan to deal with Heavenly Sword Villa with your visit this time? Feng Zuer asked gently, her words imbued with worry. Are you going to just teach them a small lesson, or go? He had previously damaged Phoenix City into a complete mess. As for Heavenly Sword Villa, to the current Yun Qi, even if he wished to demolish them, it was not going to cost him much effort. Yun Qi was slightly startled by Feng Zuer's question. He lifted his gaze, and his vision was filled with the surrounding range of mountains around the villa. He said regretfully, "Perhaps I'm here solely to vent my anger. Although Heavenly Sword Villa was morally despicable because of their betrayal, they were able to preserve their Heavenly Sword Villa's 1,000-year foundation. Besides, selfishness is human nature. Thinking from this angle, I have constantly attempted to absolve Heavenly Sword Villa during this period, but in the end, I still cannot forgive Heavenly Sword Villa. Since they chose to betray the trust placed in them, they naturally have to bear the consequences of that betrayal. Back then, both the Blue Wind Imperial family and Heavenly Sword Villa pledged to survive or perish together. With this catastrophe that Blue Wind has suffered through, Heavenly Sword Villa has no right to escape unscathed after their betrayal. And, even if I were magnanimous enough to forgive Heavenly Sword Villa, Little Fairy's matter simply cannot be overlooked." Recalling the incident involving Fen Juechen, Yun Qi's peaceful mindset abruptly emanated an aura of viciousness. With this nascent aura, he became irascible and uncontrollable. Ever since Zai Jai disseminated the free information of the mastermind behind Fen Juechen's incident, the formerly fading memory of the name, Xunyuan Yufeng, was brutally nailed into his heart and soul with bitter vengeance. Big Brother Yun, Feng Zuer instantly sensed the change in Yun Qi's emotions. She turned her face and looked at him with bright and clear eyes. Whenever the name Little Fairy was mentioned, his breathing and aura became agitated. Now at Heavenly Sword Villa, the aura he suddenly emanated was frighteningly maniacal. His gaze turned terrifying. During the past 3 months of constant day and night companionship, Fen Juechen's initial surprise and anxiety gradually changed to understanding. Towards Fen Juechen, Xianxia held deep affections, worry, yearning, guilt, and fear of not seeing her again. That was why whenever he mentioned her, or thought of her, he would fall into a state of agitation for a long period of time. Grabbing Fen Juechen's hand, Xianxia hastened down towards Heavenly Sword Villa. At the same time, a deep, somber voice with a ruthless aura encompassed Heavenly Sword Villa, and even the entire Heavenly Sword Mountains range. "Xuanyuan and Yufeng, come on out!" Xianxia's profound strength was robust and powerful. A freesaw of shock ran through the dignified sword aura surrounding Heavenly Sword Villa purely from his roar. The several thousand swords dancing in the sword management terrace became chaotic. All at once, the originally tranquil and solemn Heavenly Sword Villa was thrown into turmoil. Almost all disciples, pavilion masters, sword attendants, and elders rushed out in rage, as if facing their nemesis. After all, no one has ever dared to provoke Heavenly Sword Villa since their establishment 1,000 years ago. Heavenly Sword Villa seems to have 2 incredible guests today, Jasmine said suddenly. "Incredible guests," Xianxia frowned. 2 level 6 monarchs, 1 mid-stage and 1 late-stage. Seems like you won't be getting your way today, Jasmine said lightly. "Level 6 monarchs?" Xianxia startled slightly but did not express any worry and sneered instead. "Don't tell me they're from mighty Heavenly Sword region. Heh, it looks like I've come at the wrong time. Heavenly Sword Villa is really clinging on to whoever is backing them for dear life." Xianxia suddenly recalled a conversation he had with Ling Jai 3 years ago in Phoenix City, when he met the latter unexpectedly after the profound Sky 7 Nation ranking tournament. Back in the day, Mother chose father over grandfather, causing grandfather to be furious. A few days back, father and mother brought big brother and I to mighty Heavenly Sword region to meet grandfather. Mother and grandfather finally resolved their differences. Grandfather even seemed to like me a lot, and even said that he would personally teach me the complete Heaven's Might Absolute Sword, he. Xianxia's expression subtly turned complicated. Xianxia did not conceal himself, but blatantly showed up above Heavenly Sword Villa, coldly staring down. There were many shadows scurrying around in Heavenly Sword Villa. Directly below Xianxia, a silhouette accompanied by a cold, dense sword aura shot upwards and appeared in front of him in a split second. It was Ling Yufeng. At the same time, a number of Heavenly Sword Pavilion masters and elders, wielding profound strength in the earth-profound realm, and above followed hot on his heels, quickly falling into their battle formation and surrounding Xianxia and Fen Juechen. "Xianxia, it's really you." Ling Yufeng's expression became especially complex when he saw Xianxia, and he said with a mild smile, "You came later than I expected." Indeed, he had predicted that this day would come. At first, in order to protect the 1,000 years of foundation of Heavenly Sword Villa from the chaos brought by Divine Phoenix, they chose to violate the promise made by their ancestors, committing a betrayal of trust that breached morality. The villa was sealed, and the pleas for assistance sent by the Blue Wind Imperial family and Frozen Cloud Asgard were ignored. At that time, it had never occurred to them that the Blue Wind Imperial family would survive, much less this complete reversal of what was supposed to be an expected outcome. And the reason for this variance was Xianxia's return. Xianxia was infamous for seeking revenge for any grievances suffered. The tragic extermination of the Burning Heaven clan that year was an event nobody dared to let slip from their memory. After Xianxia survived, the first thing he did upon his return was to serve a revenge many times more devastating than the extermination of the Burning Heaven clan, towards the Divine Phoenix sect, which had the profound Sky 7 Nations under their thumb. He made them suffer a crushing defeat and threw them into a state of chaos and unrest. Eventually, they were forced to withdraw and even offered an apology and an enormous compensation to Blue Wind Nation, moreover. It was rumored that these were the consequences after Empress Kang Yue pardoned them. Otherwise, the Divine Phoenix sect might have had to pay a more tragic price. With Xianxia's character, it would have been impossible for him to forget Heavenly Sword Villa's sin of apathy after the war. After all, Heavenly Sword Villa was different from the other profound cultivating forces. At the same time, there were rumors that he saved Frozen Cloud Asgard from an imminent demise. He assumed the new appointment as the Asgard Master. As both the former Asgard Mistress Gong Yuxian and the Grand Asgard Mistress Feng Qianhui had perished, At Xianxia's hands, the Divine Phoenix sect was left devastated beyond hope. Heavenly Sword Villa would not even stand a chance. The current Xianxia was worlds apart from himself of 3 years ago. Ling Yuefeng's gaze roamed towards Xianxia's side, and he startled slightly. The young girl next to Xianxia wore a snowy white robe, her waist wrapped with thin jade silk, signifying an outfit of the frozen cloud Asgard. Her face was obscured by a muslin, and one could only vaguely see a pair of beautiful eyes. Although her face could not be seen, her entire body exuded an ethereal and fairy-esque aura. Merely looking at her would cause one to feel ashamed and inferior, and would have qualms about being disrespectful, this feeling. It was exactly the same back when he first met Fen Juechen. That particular scene, that moment his heart palpitated wildly. He would never forget it, even on his deathbed. Ah, Yuechi let out an ear-piercing sneer, which snapped him out of his fleeting absent-mindedness. Isn't this the awe-inspiring Villa Master Ling Yuefeng of the supposed #1 sect in Blue Wind Nation, the illustrious Heavenly Sword Villa? To have impulsively dropped by for a visit without prior notice, and troubled renowned Villa Master Ling to personally greet me, this junior is intimidated beyond his wits. As long as one was not deaf, one would be able to hear the ice in Xianxia's tone and his derisive sarcasm. The closest Heavenly Sword Elder exclaimed furiously, "Xianxia, don't forget your status. In our Heavenly Sword Villa, you have no place to behave audaciously." "Step down." Ling Yuefeng's chest heaved as he uttered heavily, "Villa Master." The surrounding Heavenly Sword Elders and Pavilion Masters who stood by gravely were shocked and stared at Ling Yuefeng, bewildered and nonplussed. "Step down, all of you." Ling Yuefeng's tone hardened. "Without my order, no one is allowed to come any closer." Under Ling Yuefeng's strict order, all Heavenly Sword Elders and Pavilion Masters retreated gradually while staring at Xianxia with unrestrained alarm, until everyone was a distance away. They were well aware that if Xianxia decided to strike, with his caliber of strength that left the Divine Phoenix sect in chaos, even if their strength were to be multiplied by 10, it would be moot. Once everyone had retreated, Ling Yuefeng faced Xianxia and inhaled deeply. The last time he met Xianxia was 5 or 6 years ago, and at that time, Xianxia was merely a junior who caught his attention slightly. Today, although the current Xianxia in front of him has not changed much in terms of appearance, with the exception of growing slightly taller. However, when facing him, there was a distinct pressure not unlike facing a mountain. He held exceptionally complicated feelings towards Xianxia. It could perhaps be understood as a deep envy and jealousy, stemming from his unrequited love for his beloved Fen Juechen, who did not even once spare him a glance. Yet towards this 20-something-year-old boy at the same time, there was a feeling of unavoidable resentment, although he was clear that he was not in any position to do so. "Xianxia," Ling Yuefeng said with a calm tone, "I have not left the villa these past 2 months, since I was awaiting your visit, or even someone from the Blue Wind Imperial household. We sealed the villa for the past few years as we were powerless to help, but we still feel ashamed. I have nothing further to say since you are here to condemn us." Xianxia raised his eyebrow and was just about to speak, when an elderly, dignified voice spoke from a distance. "The decision to seal the villa was made by me. The decision to withhold assistance to Frozen Cloud Asgard was also made by me." As soon as the voice was heard, an elder dressed in an ash-colored gown arrived beside Ling Yuefeng. He glanced at Xianxia and slowly closed his eyes. "Since you are here today, then I will naturally provide an explanation. Father, these are clearly the decisions I made. You didn't have anything to do with them." Ling Tiany's appearance and his words caused Ling Yuefeng to momentarily lose his train of thought, and he hurriedly added, "Xianxia, my father, said all that to shield me. As the current Villa Master of Heavenly Sword Villa, all of the decisions were made by me and have nothing to do with my father. If you have any grievances, you should just direct them at me." "Haha, how wonderful that father and son are mutually protecting each other, simply touching enough to move the world." Xianxia sneered and directed his piercingly sharp glare at Ling Tiany. "Ling Tiany, you and I have no relations, yet you traveled thousands of miles to the Blue Wind Imperial City to have me killed under the pretext of ridding evil back then, under the guise of justice, and under the pretense of purging danger from Blue Wind. Although I was badly injured and almost died by your hands, I still maintained a modicum of respect towards you in my heart, because I believed your intention towards me arose from the misunderstanding that I was a malevolent and bloodthirsty person. I thought you were an upright and principled person who loathed evil, a trustworthy and honest man." Yet when the country was facing a real crisis, even if no vow was made with the Blue Wind Profound Palace's ancestor, Heavenly Sword Villa should have stepped up as the core strength. In the end, under the leadership of Ling Tianyi, Heavenly Sword Villa has become Blue Wind Nation's biggest cowards. Xianxia criticized unreservedly. When Blue Wind Nation was enveloped in the flames of war and rivers of blood were shed, Heavenly Sword Villa has suffered not even a single loss in the past 3 years. It moved not a single muscle, and not even a shadow was seen. Recalling how you used to proudly proclaim those ostentatiously dignified words makes me nauseous. Xianxia, Ling Yuefeng's face darkened slightly. Heavenly Sword Villa has acknowledged this matter and is accordingly ashamed. But this decision was made considering our circumstantial difficulties. If you want to exact revenge, I, Ling Yuefeng, will be accountable. Desist humiliating my father. That's enough, Yuefeng. What he said was right. There is no need to absolve me. Ling Tianyi raised his hand and said weakly. With the passing of just a few years, his appearance had aged rapidly. Perhaps for the past few years, he had been carrying a heavy guilt in his heart. Xianxia, I've said that I will naturally give you and the Blue Wind Imperial family an explanation regarding this matter. An explanation? Xianxia turned and said coldly, Ha, I have not said I needed any explanation from you. Originally, I did intend to level Heavenly Sword Villa. Xianxia's frosty tone and words had anyone listening shudder in fear. Don't assume that I'm unable to deliver just because you have the backing of mighty Heavenly Sword Region. 3 months ago, even the divine Phoenix Sect's Phoenix City was almost completely razed to the ground by my hand. For me to destroy just Heavenly Sword Villa without even blinking is as easy as pie. Ling Tianyi's and Ling Yuefeng's breathing simultaneously became rougher and heavier. If those words were uttered by anyone else, it could have been brushed off as a joke. But because it came from Xianxia, it sent a chill down their spines, and they could barely crack a smile. However, before I left the Blue Wind Imperial City today, my Empress wife stopped me and said this. Heavenly Sword Villa may have disregarded the ancestors' vow, but the Blue Wind Imperial family will not do likewise. The founders of Blue Wind and Heavenly Sword pledged to support each other as pillars of power and strength in Blue Wind, to survive and perish together as brothers, and all descendants were mandated to maintain close ties with Heavenly Sword Villa. Today, even if Heavenly Sword Villa is indifferent and callous, as descendants of the Blue Wind ancestor, we will not disobey the ancestor's instructions and destroy the legacy of the Heavenly Sword ancestor. For 3 years, she was saddled with the pain from the passing of her father and her husband. She shouldered the burden of Blue Wind Nation's crisis and protected the final dignity of Blue Wind Nation and the royal family. However, she abandoned her own dignity and sought help from you 9 times. But what did she gain from this? Xianxia inhaled violently, his voice becoming more frigid and bitter. Therefore, she should be the one who carries the most hatred for you in this world and is the most qualified person to seek vengeance. But it is also her who had wanted me to forgive you. At the very least, to not eliminate Heavenly Sword Villa, but pretend Heavenly Sword Villa did not exist. With those words from Xianxia, Ling Tianyi and Ling Yuefeng's gazes wavered. As they recalled Empress Kang Yue's 9 letters of plea written with her blood and tears, a sourness welled up in their hearts, and their expressions turned markedly contrite. Which is why you can go ahead and set your hearts at ease. Since my Empress wife has made a request, I have no interest in finding trouble with Heavenly Sword Villa. I'm not about to let her stoop to your level. She would feel ashamed when meeting her ancestor in the other world. Ling Tianyi and Ling Yuefeng's faces stiffened. They had prepared themselves to pay a hefty price should they face condemnation from Xianxia and the Blue Wind Imperial family. But this was forgiveness. This kind of forgiveness astounded them, making them feel ashamed and embarrassed. Ling Tianyi closed his eyes. Flashes of emotional pain crossed his face. Although facing the divine Phoenix Nation, whose power was second to none, it was wisest to seal their villa doors. Even if they made a move, they could not promise to save the Blue Wind Imperial family. They would only accelerate their villa's demise. But no matter what reasons or excuses of hardship they were facing, it was a fact that they turned a blind eye and went back on their word. Empress Kang Yue is matchless in her farsightedness, her heart as wide as a valley. Her current fame and prestige far surpass the late emperor. Her future accomplishments will be limitless. For Blue Wind to be led by such an empress is a once-a-century fortune. I, Ling Tianyi, have lived my life with a clear conscience, but because of thoughts of comfort, I ended up letting down the Blue Wind Imperial family, frozen Cloud Asgard, and even my own heavenly sword ancestor. Ling Tiany's voice was full of regret and carried hints of pain. Although I no longer have the face to see Empress Kang Yue, my wrongdoings have been cast in stone, and I cannot keep making mistakes. Tomorrow, I will personally make a trip to Blue Wind Imperial City and apologize before Empress Kang Yue. Forget it. Xianxia raised a hand, unforgivingly interrupting Ling Tiany's speech. My Empress wife is working very hard right now and doesn't have the time to entertain you. She also doesn't want to see you nor anyone from Heavenly Sword Villa. Ling Tiany, you can also quit your hypocritical act. The reason why you are saying all these is because the Blue Wind Imperial family has been defended, and if the Blue Wind Imperial family wishes for it, as long as my Empress wife calls for it, I could stomp your Heavenly Sword Villa flat any time I want. If the Blue Wind Imperial family perished and I was already dead, would your face be like that right now? Ling Tiany's lips trembled and was left speechless. A person who would be indifferent when his own nation was being exterminated, someone who was still hard-hearted after my Empress wife begged with her tears and blood, has already ceased to possess any honor or shame. Your so-called shame and apology have no meaning in my eyes. They are not even comparable to a joke. Xianxia's eyes were ice cold. His voice chilled them to the bone. He said without any mercy, "If during these 3 years, even if you did not bother about the extermination of Blue Wind Nation, and only used your power to help the Blue Wind Imperial family, even if you merely sent people to protect the safety of my royal father and Empress wife, then today, the Blue Wind Imperial family would be grateful to you. I would be grateful towards you too. What you lost in that time, I would have repaid you tenfold. I, Xianxia, have always repaid my favors and graces. However, you chose to be ruthless and shameless. You cannot blame anyone else for the result of today's outcome. You should be glad for my Empress wife's compassion. Otherwise, after today, Heavenly Sword Villa would no longer exist. Even mighty Heavenly Sword region would not be able to protect you." Whether it was Ling Tiany or Ling Yuefeng, both were legends within Blue Wind Nation. When were they ever insulted and abused before? However, facing Xianxia's ear-piercing words, they tilted their heads with their eyes closed and didn't retort. They did not have the qualifications to retort. After all, even though they chose to selfishly ignore Blue Wind Nation's crisis, they were not actually vile people who did not know the meaning of shame. On the contrary, no matter if it was the human way or the way of the sword, they had some accomplishments on the righteous path. The past 3 years was probably the biggest shame and wrongdoing of their entire lives. Ling Tiany and Ling Yuefeng did not retort, however. An incomparably piercing female voice came from below. "Xianxia, you really have quite the manner of speaking. You not only dishonor my Heavenly Sword Villa, you even dare to disregard mighty Heavenly Sword region, who gave you such guts." Xianxia Yufeng soared into the air, landing to the right of Ling Yuefeng. Her decently beautiful face showed a completely opposite expression from Ling Yuefeng. She looked at Xianxia with a face full of anger, hostility, and ridicule. "Xianxia Yufeng?" Xianxia slowly squinted his eyes. The woman in front of him was the real reason he came to Heavenly Sword Villa today. "Yufeng, this does not concern you. Quickly go back," Ling Yuefeng said lightly. He deeply understood Xianxia Yufeng's temper and knew Xianxia was not one to swallow it. "Does not concern me?" Xianxia Yufeng laughed coldly. He already clearly said that he wasn't here on the behalf of the Blue Wind Imperial family. As to the real reason why he is here today, the words he yelled when he arrived were my Xianxia Yufeng's name. How could this not concern me? Ling Yuefeng shook when he heard it, then suddenly recalled. The words that Xianxia yelled when he reached Heavenly Sword Villa were clearly, "Xianxia Yufeng, come on out." He was already prepared for Xianxia's arrival. He was sure that Xianxia would be here on the behalf of the Blue Wind Imperial family. He subconsciously did not notice that the person he yelled for was actually Xianxia Yufeng, and only Xianxia Yufeng. Xianxia Yufeng? After Xianxia Yufeng appeared, Xianxia's gaze fixed deadly onto her. The look in his eye and the aura on his body had also become bone-piercingly cold. The atmosphere had even become so tense that killing intent could appear any moment. Between us, we have a huge debt to account for. Facing Ling Yuefeng and Ling Tiany, Xianxia's voice was full of contempt and disdain. However, when he spoke to Xianxia Yufeng, his words were laced with killing intent. The abrupt change in atmosphere suddenly made Ling Yuefeng aware that the situation was very abnormal, not just simply abnormal. Resentment, coldness, and killing intent, all these he could perceive clearly. He hurriedly stepped forward. "Xianxia, There must have been some sort of misunderstanding. Ever since my wife married into Heavenly Sword Villa, she practically never leaves the villa and does not interfere with matters that do not pertain to the villa. My wife only met you 6 years ago, and you did not even converse. How could there be any animosity? Moreover, all the decisions made in the past few years were solely made by me, the villa master. They had nothing to do with my wife at all. There must have been a misunderstanding. Ling Yuefeng was not merely protecting her. He was the clearest on what Xun Yuan Yufeng had done these past years. After marrying into the villa, she practically never stepped out of the villa. For the past few years, the few times that she did leave were only to return to mighty Heavenly Sword region, and those few times he had followed along. He absolutely could not think of how Xun Yuan Yufeng could have provoked Yun Qi, and from the looks of it, there was an enormous amount of hatred. Misunderstanding. Both of Yun Qi's hands tightened, his joints turning white. Xun Yuan Yufeng, whether it is a misunderstanding, your heart knows it the clearest. Today, I do not need any explanation from Heavenly Sword Villa, but you... Before finishing his words, Yun Qi could not restrain his anger. His silhouette rushed out explosively, his gaze like a cold star, his hands grabbing onto Xun Yuan Yufeng's neck like an eagle's talons. "Stop!" Ling Yuefeng and Ling Tianyi yelled in alarm at the same time. They were still wondering what kind of hatred did Yun Qi have towards Xun Yuan Yufeng. But they never imagined that he would actually make a move, and so viciously. Ling Yuefeng and Ling Tianyi went in both directions, intending to stop Yun Qi. However, though their strength was like an insurmountable mountain to Yun Qi 6 years ago, today, their roles had completely reversed. They had only taken half a step, without even having the time to raise their arms, and they were struck by the waves of air brought by Yun Qi's body. They did not even have a shred of power to resist. At this point, an ear-piercing, slashing sound rang out. A streak of sword energy tyrannical to the point that it warped space as it flew from below. One moment it was 300 meters away, in the next moment, as if striding across space, it suddenly swept towards Yun Qi. Clang, Yun Qi turned his body, blasting all the profound energy he had already prepared at his front. The space in front of him distorted, the path which the sword energy was taking bent by a huge degree, flying straight behind Yun Qi. At the same time, Yun Qi was forced to retreat back beside Feng Zuer, looking coldly at the two silhouettes which just appeared. "Looks like the two of you are finally willing to appear. I almost thought that mighty Heavenly Sword region was full of cowards." Yun Qi held a deep sense of resentment towards mighty Heavenly Sword region, so he did not hold back when speaking. "Ho ho ho!" Amidst the gentle laugh, two similarly aged elders floated in the air, each to the left and right sides of Xun Yuan Yufeng. One was wearing a green robe and the other a gray robe. On their backs were respectively green and gray longswords. Their gazes were as sharp and cold as the edge of a blade. The profound energy they possessed was naturally as deep and boundless as the vast ocean. They were not the least bit angry upon hearing Yun Qi's derogatory words about mighty Heavenly Sword region. The elder in green gazed at Yun Qi for a moment, then slightly nodded his head and said with a slight smile, "Although this old one has been at the Sword region for a long time, in recent times, the name Yun Qi has a well-known reputation. I thought I would be able to view your talent in 2 months at the Devil Sword Conference. Who knew that we would have a chance encounter here? This could be counted as a fortunate event. Elders!" The aura on both Ling Tianyi's and Ling Yuefeng's bodies were in a huge mess from Yun Qi's previous attack. Seeing the elders in green and gray appear, they hurriedly clasped their hands before their chests and saluted. That was because to them at Heavenly Sword Villa, these two were high-ranking people they could not afford to neglect. However, Yun Qi was entirely different from them. Even though he clearly knew they were from mighty Heavenly Sword region, much less the fact that they had the status of elders, his face was as dark as before. Fortunate event. Since it is a fortunate event, what does the attack from before mean? Since you have heard of my great name, then, have you ever heard of this? I am a person who holds an extremely deep grudge.